This
quick
conference will
chat.
now
Okay,
be recorded.
perfect. So let's get started with this particular program. So I'm really excited to spend the valuable 2 hours with you folks. Please make sure you stay till end of this particular program. So the first thing I'm going to show you the world of MLOps. How does your future might look like for the next 5 to 10 years? And again, only the folks who are going to stay till end of this particular program, so they can able to download the free MLOps ebooks that we are providing. And the third thing is talking more about how does an opportunity looks like for you folks. Obviously, you want to take away the valuable lessons, the insights from this particular program, and I want everyone, you folks, to reshape your futures accordingly for the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, so we are almost heading towards the new year 2024. Let's hope all the success for you folks, and happy new year and happy Christmas for everyone. So let's all hope for the success with AI, getting into the AI. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so okay, so what are we going to talk about today? So we are going to talk about MLOps, machine learning operations, and we're going to talk about our specialization course, which is going to start from January. We'll talk about that one in detail in more upcoming slides. Okay, so let's get started. Just give me a sec, 1 second. So let's get started. So this session is going to be for next 2 hours, starting from the current minute. So please make sure you stay till end of this particular program. I'm also going to open the session for Q&A. So you guys can able to spend a lot of time talking to me, obviously. So only if you stay till end of this particular program. So let's get started with today's program. Awesome. So let me just start navigating my slides here. Okay, so a quick introduction about me. Obviously, let me just quickly turn on my camera. So I believe you folks could able to see me right now. Hey folks, yes, this is Sharath. I'm a founder and CEO of Cyclone Technologies. I will be your host for the next 2 hours. Going to walk you guys through the world of AI and MLOps, what we're talking about. So I have helped more than let's say 5,000 plus working professionals like you who want to become an expert in MLOps. I want to expert in AI. You want to learn anything related to AWS or Azure or GCP or open source tools in terms of AI, we are the best peoples outside. So you can just go ahead and check out more details about us in www.cyclonetech.com. So you can more learn about us later in our website, but let's focus on this today's program right now. Saying that, okay, let's get started. I'm going to just mute my camera, otherwise you'll be having my screen feed towards the right side. Okay, so let's get started. Perfect. These are the highlights of this particular demonstration. So these are the three areas that we're going to spend more time in this particular program. So what is really MLOps is and what it takes to master MLOps, right? I mean, what it takes to master MLOps for you, what I mean, and how does a market looks like? I mean, how does a job market looks like for MLOps? We're going to discuss about these three things here in this particular program. Okay, let's get started. So what do you think the MLOps is all about? So before we getting started with an MLOps, I just want to get started with this a beautiful picture. Okay, I want you folks to observe this particular picture and try to describe this particular picture in the chat window. What you can find in this particular picture? What do you think you can find in this particular picture? Use your chat window, try to describe it. It's going to be fun. Try to describe what is this picture is about. So what do you find in this particular picture? What kind of an objects you can find? So what kind of an items or sceneries you can able to find? Okay, here we have a first message in a chat window. Krish says is a dog park. Obviously, that's correct. So Deed says the classification in the dog and humans. That's an awesome description, Deed. So here we have Navin says it's a park. Rahul says okay. Uh, so the park, obviously, that's awesome. So obviously we know that this is a picture of a park. So Girika says people are walking within here, pets in park. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, but that's not a question that I want to ask. Okay, let us think it in a bit different way. Okay, folks, how do you know this is a picture of a park? Instead of I'm asking you a question, try to describe what is there in this particular picture. My question is, how do you know this is a picture of a park? So obviously you folks are describing this is a park because you can see there's a lot of trees outside and a lot of people's having a time, enjoying the time over there with their pets. Like I can see the dogs, not even a single breed of a dog. I mean, we can able to see a different breeds of dogs, right? Here is a different breed, here is a different breed, obviously. And we do have a men and we do have a women here, and we have a path where we can walk. But my question is, how do you know this is a picture of a park? How do you know this is a picture of a dog? Who taught you this is how the dog looks like, right? So these questions might be a bit funnier, right? Bit funny when I'm asking, okay, how do you know this is a picture of a park? But let's say if we are thinking in a different way, right? So let's go to the next slide. So what if I'm going to grab the same picture? Let's say I'm going to grab a same picture. I'm going to display this picture to the newborn baby, and maybe a baby might be less than 1 year old. So do you think a baby could able to recognize the same things, the same objects, the same descriptions that you're given? So do you think the baby could able to describe this? Definitely not, right? So Emmanuel. So definitely not. A baby couldn't able to recognize. Maybe a newborn baby could able to barely recognize his mother or a father, but apart from that, the baby doesn't know anything else, right? So what if I'm going to display the same picture, maybe to the person who might be in a primary school, let's say his age is somewhere around 7 years old or 8 years old. So now, yes, the person could able to recognize it, right? So what I'm trying to explain here, right? So consider that we are a biological machines. Obviously, we are the best examples of what we're calling it as AI today. Obviously, we are the creators. We are the best examples here, right? So consider that. So here, this is an example of a growth cycle of a human being, right? So let's say if I put it everything in a graph, right? So the learning curve of a human being exponentially grows up, right? So each and every day we learn something better, right? So starting from, let's say, a newborn baby, so you will be started learning from his parents, can be your first teachers, starting learning how to walk, or how to recognize the peoples, learning mathematics, science, and physics, and we much get better each and every day. So we might go to a college, university, graduate, then we started working, then finally we expire, right? So that's not a topic for today anyway. So but what I'm trying to mention here is we are the best examples of what we call it as AI today, right? So consider that as a human beings, we consume our data in various different fashions, isn't it? I mean, what do you mean by that? So we consume our data through our eyes, obviously, right? So through visuals. So we consume our data through our ears, through audio. So we consume our data through a sense by touching. We consume our data through our nose. I mean, by smelling things, obviously, right? So there are various different ways we consume a data, and we learn the data, we become much more better, and we could able to make decisions for a future. We can able to predict what's going to happen in the future. So a good example is you attending this particular demo session. So you decided to join and you decided to provide your valuable 2 hours with me, believing that you're going to learn something about MLOps, which is going to really impact in a positive way for your future. So that's a great example. So this is what we are doing today. So the same things, the way we could able to learn a data, and we could able to make a decisions and predictions for the future. So human beings today is trying to teach the same exact things to these dumb machines, right? So we want to teach the same exact data what we have learned, and we want these machines to make a predictions. We want these machines to make a decisions for the future, right? So what is the best example? Let's try to pick up best example here. So maybe we'll consume a simple data, right? So let's consider this is a CSV file. Okay, so what do we have in this CSV file? Let's say this particular CSV file has a 3,000 data points. I mean 30,000 rows. So this is a 3 years old data. This is a 3 years old data. So what is this data is about? Let's pick up a simple use case. Let's say this is a data that represents the electricity consumption in your home. What do you mean by that? Let's say I put up some sensors in your home. Let's say I collect how much electricity does your washing machine, water geyser, or maybe any electrical appliances that you have in a home. Let's say I collect this data with the bills that you are paying. So my goal is pretty much simple. I want to take this data, I want to teach this data to a machine. It can be a computer, it can be a server in the cloud, or it can be any kind of a server that we're talking about. So this machine tries to understand the data. So it tries to learn a pattern, how you consume electricity, in a spring, how do you consume electricity in maybe in a winter or maybe in a summer. So it tries to understand the pattern. So then it creates something called a machine learning model, which is going to be part of a final end product. So now we can ask this model to make decisions for a future. Otherwise, in this particular use case, I can able to ask this machine to make a forecast saying that what is a bill that I'm going to pay for the next 6 months. Just try to imagine, we can able to ask this model to make a prediction. What will be the bill that I'm going to for the next first month, second month, or maybe for the next 6 months, what is a bill that I'm going to pay? So a model can able to predict. So now you could able to deploy this model to production, and you can able to solve thousands of people's problems here. So what we call it as AI at the final end product, what we're talking about. Okay, so we do have a clear idea about this. So, but the question is, so what is a typical workflow of creating a successful ML model? So today we do have a lot of data engineers outside and a lot of data scientists outside who is really good at understanding the data, Python programming, building an ML models, working with algorithms. Okay, so but do you think like, I mean, so like if you could able to produce the successful ML model, do you think it could able to bring a success for your organization? So I mean, so just to have a quality ML model could able to bring the success for an organization? Definitely not. So there is more than that what we need. So let's try to understand what is the basic requirements for creating a successful machine learning model today. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so first let's get started with the data. Okay, perfect. So we consume a data in various fashions, isn't it? As I mentioned, okay, we consume a data through our eyes. We smell things, that's a data. We hear things, that's a data, right? So in the same way, a machine could able to consume a data in various different ways. A data can be a picture, isn't it? Let's say it can be a JPEG, or it can be a CSV document as I discussed. It can be a JSON document, it can be a text files, it can be a PNG files, or whatever the format it is, right? So as we discussed, a machine can also consume a data in various different types. So what is the next step? So the next step, we call it as preparation, or data preparation. So what do you mean by this? Data preparation is similar to what we do in the kitchen. So is there any chef here? I mean, I'm talking about obviously. So most of you folks, you might know how we cook, right? So let's say if you want to prepare your favorite recipe, what we do? First, we go to a market, we buy some vegetables, and we start cleaning it, and we remove unnecessary things. We start putting some ingredients, masalas, and we start preparing our favorite recipe. That's how it works, right? So that is what exactly the data preparation is all about. So the real-time data that is coming from your customers comes with a lot of garbages in it. I mean, a lot of missing data, outliers, a lot of things. So we started cleaning it, preparing it, and transforming it if it is necessary. So we make sure the data is clean. Perfect. So what do we do next? Then we pick up our tools, our IDEs, for example, Jupyter Notebooks, our VS Code, or any kind of an IDEs, which our data engineers are data scientists. So those people write a code, obviously. So in Python or maybe any different programming languages. So why do they write a code? Obviously, the game that we are playing here is it's all about data. The goal for us is to take a data, teach a data to a machine. So that's why we write a program. So here our data scientist does mention where is our data is coming from. So your data might be sitting in your PC, in your C disk or D disk, or maybe it is sitting in a cloud server, right? Something like that, right? So we write a code to mention where is my data is coming from. And we do mention, obviously we want to teach this data to a machine. So we pick a machine, we need to pick a machine, whether it can be your computer, it can be a CPU based machine or GPU based machine that is sitting in a cloud. So we do mention everything in a code over here. So okay, now once we have a code, we started executing a code. In a first step, we start picking a machine. Let's say I pick a machine and I start teaching a data to a machine, the data that I cleaned and prepared. So now the machine tries to understand pattern from the data, then it produces a machine learning model. And we use this model to test whether it is really working good with the test data. And if you're really satisfied with that, so in the next step, we want to go ahead and start registering your ML model to something called model registry. So what do you mean by model registry here? So we do have a final end product, which is, the ML model, but this model has to be deployed to a production. So now we need to have some kind of a tool to manage this ML models. What do you mean by that? So let's say, consider that you're working in a software industry. Let's say you're building a software, right? You're making a software. So how many, like, just imagine how many versions of a software you might produce throughout the life cycle of that particular project. So what do you think? We're going to release only one version and it's going to stick to till end of this life cycle of the project? Are we going to produce multiple versions of that software? What do you think? So are you using the oldest version of a WhatsApp, or do you have a latest version of a WhatsApp? Definitely we do have a multiple versions of WhatsApp today, right? So the same things applies for AI industry also. The models will have multiple versions, right? You retrain with the new data, you produce multiple versions of your ML models. And we need a right kind of a tools in order to version these models. We call it as model registries. So we use this model registries in order to version this ML models. Consider that we do have this model registries. We version all our models, version 1, version 2, version 3, blah, blah, blah. Perfect. Now let's say I pick up a best version of a model. Let's consider that the version 3 is perfect. So now I want to go ahead and deploy these models to production, where I can able to start reaching my customers. So what do you mean by this? Let's say here in organizations today, they follow different kind of strategies to deploy these models to production. Maybe according to this slide, maybe I want to take my model, I want to Dockerize it, and I want to deploy it into a Docker platform, a Docker hosting platform. Otherwise, maybe a few organizations want to deploy the Dockerized model into the Kubernetes platform. Maybe an organizations want to deploy their models to something called real-time endpoint, to batch prediction otherwise. Or maybe I want to deploy my ML models to the mobile phones, maybe to your mobile phones, Android, or to like IoT devices, for example. Or maybe I want to deploy the models to serverless frameworks. So there are different strategies does organizations use in order to deploy your ML models. So now let's consider that we are deploying the model to the Docker platform. And now once the model has been deployed, here comes our front-end developers. I mean, our fellow front-end developers who are going to build a front-end application, maybe an Android app, or maybe a web app, where our end customer is going to use it to invoke the models that we have deployed basically. So that's how the typical workflow would look like actually. So, and we know that, so machine learning, what we are talking about, it's all about study about an algorithms and mathematical models, so that your computer systems or maybe the servers in a cloud progressively improves on a specific task. It's all about teaching complex mathematical models, and once machine understands the complex mathematical models, we can able to ask this machine to make some predictions of we can able to ask this machine to make a decision for a future. So what we call it as an actual ML model, which is going to be part of final end product. Saying that, so we know that our data scientists or data engineers, what we're talking about, they do use a lot of different programming languages to write a code in order to produce these ML models. We got it, but the one question is still not yet answered. What is MLOps? We do understand the process, but what is MLOps? MLOps stands for machine learning operations. So, but what is it really all about? So in order to understand the MLOps, first we need to understand why we need MLOps, right? So we have data scientists, we do have data engineers. Can they manage a job? Do we need MLOps skill sets really in this world? To understand this, let's try to understand the state of machine learning. So what do you mean by that? So what is happening in every industry right now who is working with data science, machine learning, or AI, right? Who says we are AI driven industry. So what's happening in every industry today? So what is the current state of machine learning in the world? To understand this, we need to go back to the last decade. Let's do the time travel and let's go to the last 10 years ago. I'm just kidding. Let's try to imagine what happened last 10 years ago. I'm trying to mention what happened in early 2000, 2005. See, that's the time every organizations, every IT organizations at that particular time, they had a lot of data sitting in their organizations, but they're doing nothing with that data. So that's the point where they started hiring a data engineers and data scientist, someone who can able to build an ML model. So the focus of every organizations at that particular time to build an ML model, operationalizing that ML model to production is not at all in a focus. So they're not operationalizing their models to production. They are just building ML models. What do you mean by that? They are just building ML models, but they are not making any money out of it. And today, I'm talking about 2023, right? So today it's already 53% of organizations who had POCs, they are making into the production already. And it takes an average of 9 months for every organizations to do that. And it is expected by end of 2024. I'm not talking about next 5 years, folks. I'm talking about the next year, the end of next year, 75% of organizations will be shifting their POCs to production already. That means they will be started making money. So how does this data really helping you guys? You might ask a question. This is exactly what we're calling about where MLOps comes into picture. So last 10 years, every organization let's say the ML models, but they're not productionizing it. So what is actually required for productionizing your ML models? What you need is what we call it as an automation. You need some kind of an automation in a place in order to deliver your ML models to production. That's exactly what we call it as MLOps. MLOps is all about building an automation to deliver your ML models to production. But there's more things comes into the picture. We'll discuss in detail later. And here is a small validation for you folks. Okay, there is a small validation. So today we are talking about more about AI. Let's consider that end of let's say 2022. We are talking about more about AI starting from year 2022. So just imagine that ChatGPT, what we call it as AI tool today, got released let's say end of 2022. So then we are talking about DALI 2, DALI 3. We are talking about other cloud platforms like Azure. They are releasing a lot of AI tools. AWS, they have a lot of AI tools. Today, if you're a follower of any tech blog, if you follow some things on LinkedIn, every week you will see a new update in AI industry, right? So why it is happening today, why not happening last 5 years ago? This is what exactly the data says, because no one is productionizing their work, right? No one is productionizing their ML models to production. Everyone is just building it. So now it's a time where they are productionizing it to, productionizing, and where they need some kind of an automation to deliver those models to production. So today, if you go ahead and check out the Chat GPT portal, Chat GPT is not running the same version they have released on 2022, end of 2022. If you can go and check the ChatGPT portal, you should able to notice that what is the current version of ChatGPT that is running. So they do have some kind of an automation which is helping them to deliver their model to production. So that's what we are talking about, MLOps. But still, the question exactly remains same. What is MLOps? As we discussed, MLOps is a practice for collaboration and communication between the different stakeholders who is part of building AI here. What do you mean by that? So who are the stakeholders who are part of building ML projects here? It's not just a data scientist or operational team, but there are a lot of different stakeholders. We do have data engineers, we do have data analysts, basically someone who's going to build a data pipelines, harvest the data. We do have a data scientist, someone who takes a data from a data engineer and he builds an ML model, which is going to be part of final end product. And we do have ML engineers, someone who's going to take a model from our data scientist, he's going to go ahead and deploy it to the production. Then we have an operations team, otherwise we call MLOps engineers, someone who's going to deploy the infrastructure, manage the infrastructure, building the pipelines, basically where our data scientists, data engineers, or ML engineers can start working on top of it, right? So as we are talking about, so basically when we are applying this MLOps practices, it could able to increase the quality and it can able to simplify the management process of how you build, train, and deploy your ML models to production. See, MLOps is all about building an automation to deliver your machine learning models or delivering your deep learning models to large scale production environment. We are talking about large scale production environment. Okay, saying that, let's get into the high level view of MLOps. I'm talking about the MLOps motivation in a high level. What do you mean by that? So as we discussed, MLOps is a discipline that intersects between various domains. For example, it's an intersection between DevOps, data engineering, and machine learning. So what we get, MLOps, what we call it as machine learning operations. So let's say this intersection of these practices, when they're coming together, we can really drive a value in how we build, deliver, and manage your machine learning models. So obviously MLOps as a discipline will be enabled by the core set of practices. Obviously, once we have people's technology and process together, then only an industry could able to implement MLOps practices in their organization actually. Okay, let's learn more about this. Let's start with discussing about the MLOps challenges. So do we have any challenges in implementing MLOps? Definitely yes. So let's say in the process of we creating and managing a machine learning workflows, we will definitely run into a lot of different challenges. You know that ML model building involves multiple steps. Steps like the first thing, let's say, as we discussed, we do data preparation, then we do model training, and then model deployments. So not only we do have these steps, there's a lot goes into stitching different things together. I mean, let's say we want to stitch data preparation with model training with model deployment, right? We need to do a lot of stitching works here. So let's try to discuss in detail. So what are the challenges do you think we will be facing in data preparation? So in your data preparation step, usually we might contain, let's say, one to many tasks. Like let's say first thing is we will be taking a raw data and splitting it into or transforming it into training data set, validation data set, or test data set. We have a raw data, we split it into multiple chunks. That's what exactly we do it in a data preparation. So once when it comes to model training step, in this step you might have some additional steps inside your model training. So whether you're doing a single model training or you might be doing hyperparameter optimization or hyperparameter optimization, basically we are talking about experiments, basically multiple experiments. So what do you mean by that? So let's say when it comes to the model training job, you cannot produce the best version of a model in a one single shot. No, That's not going to be possible. That's not going to be easy. So in a one single shot, you cannot produce a best quality ML model. This is where what we call it as experiments. There is something called hyperparameters. We keep on optimizing it. We do multiple iterations until we could able to figure out the best version of a model. Perfect. Let's say you might have gone to iteration 1, iteration 10, for example. So let's say somewhere after iteration 10, let's say you have the model, for example. Let's say now you have a best version of a model. Now you want to go ahead and deploy it to the production. So now comes the model deployment stage. So in your model deployment step, you might have only one step in a workflow, or it could have many tasks underneath it. Maybe let's say you want to deploy your model to a staging environment, or let's say what we call it as a dev environment, or you want to deploy your model to the production environment, or you might need some additional different controls inside, like manual approval process, something like that. So let me just explain it in a very simplest fashion. Okay, consider that you have a first version of an ML model here. So now you want to go ahead and deploy this first version of an ML model to production. So what happens, we won't just go ahead and deploy the model to production directly. Instead, what we do have a multiple environments inside. So let's say we do have something called a dev environment, and then we do have something called a production environment. Okay, so initially we deploy our version 1 of a model to dev environment. So what is this dev and what is production? So dev is for your internal team and production is for your clients. This is for your end users. So this is for your end users actually. So dev is for your internal team. So let's say you might have a data scientist, senior data scientist, or someone who want to evaluate the model that you're deployed in a dev environment. Let's say you want to do some testings and you want to evaluate all your interpretations. And let's say if you're really satisfied with the results that you got in dev environment, so then we deploy the same version of an ML model to production environment. So that's how it works. So, and again, if you want to deploy your ML model to a dev environment or production environment, let's say you need some additional controls in it. So for example, you don't want to automatically go ahead and deploy your model to dev or production. Instead, you need to have some approval process. So let's say we might have a button here. Let's say if you want to deploy your model to dev environment, let's say you're a senior data scientist, for example, you want to approve this model to be deployed to dev. So once he clicks this button, approve button, this go ahead and deploys to dev. Same process, we do have the approval process in order to deploy your ML model to production, which is a good practice. Before you deploying your work, it's better to review it and just go ahead and deploy to your different stages that you do have. So there are a lot of different steps, obviously, and there are a lot of different dependencies has to work together to ultimately build this and build out something that provides, let's say, iteration across the life cycle, and also to provide end-to-end traceability to track the models that you have trained in your model development environment, and whether the model is going to be deployed to a production environment, how they are being deployed, what version of a model is going to be deployed, all those things has to be tracked. So end-to-end traceability plays a very important role. That means we need to monitor the complete infrastructure. So we do have an infrastructure for data preparation, model training, model deployment. We need to monitor the complete infrastructure, including the models that we are deployed to production, basically. So this will be the challenges, basically. So now let's talk about the another term that has been used. What do you mean by that? So when we talk about MLOps, we do definitely talk about something called DevOps. So sometimes we assume, okay, whether the DevOps and MLOps are they same or are they different? Let's try to understand that in detail. So let's try to compare the MLOps challenges that we do have with DevOps practices. So what do you mean by that? So let's say when we talk about the MLOps challenges, they have some similar things when we talk about DevOps. There are some similarities when we compare MLOps and DevOps here. See, challenges in operationalizing your ML models in MLOps has some common things in DevOps. I'm talking about the CI/CD practices, what we follow in DevOps, our source and version control practices that we follow in DevOps are common in MLOps also. That means we do use CI/CD tools in DevOps for MLOps. We do use source version control tools that we do use it in DevOps also for MLOps. Okay, so but the problem here is, so when we talk about this CI/CD practices, you know that a lot of times this CI/CD tools are not necessarily built for machine learning separately. In reality, what happens, you might use some different combinations of tools and integrations. Sometimes There might be a purpose-built tool for data preparation, purpose-built tool for model training and model deployment. So that's how it works. So all those things, you know that it can be complicated and challenging to stitch things together. And more complicated than this is really, there's no golden pipeline that you can able to follow. So what do you mean by the golden pipeline that you can able to follow? So consider that today, if I draft an architecture on top of AWS or Azure or GCP or something with open source tools, not every organization can stick to that, because the requirement for technical implementations, your organization structure can be different. Tools you might need to integrate might vary, right? So, but what is going to be common? The steps and core concepts that I recommend, it's going to be remain same across the machine learning workflows, whether you're going to deploy your workloads on AWS or Azure or GCP or open source tools. Okay, to understand this entire workflow, right, or putting it in a very simplest fashion, to understand the flavors of tools that we do use it in MLOps, let me just tell you a simple story. Okay, a very interesting story, obviously, which will be a fun and where you can able to understand the entire tools here. Okay, let's get started. Okay, perfect. Let's go back to 2020. Okay, we're talking about 2020. Let's say we are building an ML model for theater owners. I'm talking about theater owners. Let's say you're building an ML model to predict how much tickets they're going to sell or how much revenue they're going to make. Okay, this is a model that we're building. Okay, perfect. And let's say at that particular time in 2020, let's say we didn't implement anything related to MLOps. We didn't care about MLOps at all. Everything is done manually, data preparation, model training, and we deployed our models manually. We didn't implement any kind of an automation. So, and again, our data scientist assured the client saying that this model is going to completely work fine for next 5 to 10 years. No problem at all. This model is going to work fine. But the model didn't work for not even for a year, but model got failed in the next couple of months. Let's consider 3 to 4 months itself. The model got failed slowly. So what's the reason? What would be the possible reason? You know what happened in 2020? Pandemic, obviously, right? So once the pandemic hit, so no one went to theaters. People gradually started reducing to going for theaters, basically, right? So why the theater owners got failed here? The reason is, just imagine that due to pandemic, obviously no one went to theaters. We gradually stopped reducing for going to theaters. In case if this data scientist or maybe the team, in case if they could have implemented a model monitoring tools, they could have just identified that their customer behavior is changing, what we're calling it as a drift in their models. They could able to identify there is some kind of a drift, what we call it as data drift technically. So could able to help them to understand your customer behavior is changing. In case if they could have implemented model monitoring tools, they could have just came to know that. Once they could able to came to know that there is a drift in a model, they could have taken a new data and they could have retrained another version of ML model. That means the new data will have a new customer behavior and the model will be updated. They did failed over there. So let's take a look in another side of a story here. Let's start from a data. So obviously this is a game that we are playing with the data, obviously, right? So consider that during before COVID, obviously everyone is going for theaters, and even after during COVID, obviously we didn't go for theaters for watching movies, but we started watching movies more than we watching the movies before COVID. How does this happen? During COVID, I'm telling you, we did watch a lot of movies. What is the reason? OTTs. You know that OTTs skyrocketed at that particular time. We started watching more movies. A lot of new OTTs even born at that particular time. So here, again, there's a new customer behavior. And even after COVID today, there is a very small niche of people who stop going for theaters, because we know that if we wait for 15 days, the movie is going to arrive in OTTs. We can peacefully watch from our home, right? So that will be the mindset. See, what I'm trying to mention here, how does it really related to the problem that you're talking about? We are talking about three different kind of customer behavior during COVID, sorry, before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. So consider that three different versions of a data. That means when it comes to MLOps, we need to version our data. So there are different kind of tools, what we call it as data version control tools, are available in the market that you could able to use in order to version your data. For example, there is a tool called DVC, which stands for data version control tool. And when we talk about AWS or Azure or GCP, they do have their own tools that we could able to use in order to version the data. So that's first. Then comes source version control tools. So then comes the source version control tools. Here we do have a data engineers or data scientists, someone who going to build an actual ML model. So they're going to write a lot of code. So tell me if there is any developers here or any data scientists or data engineers, someone who's going to work with the code, how many times the code that you have written has been changed? Just mention it in chat. How many times the code that you have written has been changed? Definitely, maybe more than one times, right? There's no count, obviously, lot of times. That would be the answer. So have you ever managed to implement the source version control tools? I mean, we are talking about integrating tools like GitHub, for example, or any kind of repositories on AWS, like AWS has something called AWS code commit, Azure repos, or something on GCP. Would have really helped you to manage the different versions of code. You can go to the previous version of a code if you need, right? So then comes, let's say you have a code, you have a data. Then what is next? We will start building an ML model. What happens after building an ML model? You produce ML model, right? Which is going to be part of final end product. Again, try to understand this. As we discussed already, we might not produce only one version of an ML model. We might produce multiple versions of ML model throughout the life cycle of a ML project. And tell me, how are you going to manage all the different versions of an ML model right now? You might have version 1, version 2, version 3, version N. How are you going to manage all these versions? So you might say that, okay, Sharath, we can use the same source version control tools like GitHub itself for versioning the models. Definitely not. GitHub is not. I mean, source version control tools like Git-based tools are not. GitHub, for example, is not made for versioning your ML models. So there is a dedicated tools for that. We call it as a model registries. We do use model registries. There is a very famous open source tool that's outside. It's called MLflow, which you can use it for model registry, and you can also use it for experiment tracking tool. And again, as we discussed, we might not get the successful ML model in a one single shot. We might go for multiple experiments. And again, we want to compare all these experiments. Let's say you have done 10 iterations. 10 iterations will have 10 different experiments, 10 different hyperparameters that you have used. Let's say we want to compare everything. So we need an experiment tracking tool also. So we do use tools like MLflow, which is a model registry for that. And every cloud platform, SageMaker in AWS, they have a model registry. AML Studio in Azure have a model registry. Vertex AI in GCP, they have a model registry. Every organizations, they might use different cloud for their different use cases. So that's how we also manage our ML models. So then what? Now we need to go ahead and deploy your ML models to production. As we discussed already, each and every organization, they follow different strategies in deploying the models. Dockers, Kubernetes, real-time endpoint, batch are to the edge devices, as we discussed basically, right? So this could be the things what we need to really consider over here. Okay, saying that, now let's get started. So now we have a good awareness about MLOps. Now I'm going to help you to become master this MLOps basically. So how you can able to become a specialist? Okay, see folks, one more thing that you need to understand. The folks who are going to take our program, I mean the MLOps specialization course, we do have a candidates ranging from 1 year of experience to 20 to 25 years of experience people. Okay, so what would be the takeaway for the candidate? Just imagine what would be the takeaway for someone who is going to have, let's say, more than 6 or 8 plus years of experience. Like we do have a senior data scientist, we do have DevOps engineers, we do have solution architects. So what would be the take for them basically? So let's see how you can able to master this MLOps irrespective of whatever the work experience that you do have, whether you are in 1 year of experience or maybe 18 to 20, 25 years of experience. Okay, so in order to understand this, first we need to understand the MLOps components. So the MLOps components explains the different kind of components, the steps that we do have in the process of building these pipelines. The first thing, obviously, identifying the right use case, correct? So we believe, let's okay, every organization, they might have some kind of a use case to get started. So then there's the data engineering step. So this is where we do have a data engineers, they build data pipelines to pull the data, to harvest the data for our organization. So then we build this machine learning pipelines, obviously the automation for us to build, try and deploy, monitor your ML models basically. Then we have a production deployment. This is where we go ahead and deploy, and then comes a production monitoring. I'm talking about not just monitoring the models in production, You need to monitor the complete infrastructure that you do have, right? So initially, let's say we will be getting started with a business understanding. Then we do use case identification, data understanding, the feasibility study. Obviously, the first thing, the foremost first thing is about data. If you don't have a proper resource for a data in your organization, there's no point of we talking about AI or MLOps or Gen AI, right? So it's the place where it starts, it's data. Okay, let's assume that we do have a proper resource for a data. So then we started doing this data preparation, as we are talking about, clean it, prepare it, transform it if necessary. So then we pick the best algorithm that we can able to use in order to solve this particular problem, right? So then we started building your ML model. Then we do started doing multiple experiments. As I mentioned, you might not get the best model in a one single shot. You might do multiple experiments until you get the best model. So let's say now you have a best model. Then we started doing a model evaluation. We started capturing all the metrics that helps us to check whether it is a best model or not. So then we started thinking about serving this model. That means we need to serve this model to our clients so they can start using it. So this is where we started deploying the models, build an automation on top of it, start operating it, and start monitoring it in a production and keep on optimizing it. So once you monitor the models, you learn a lessons from it, and you learn a lesson, keep optimizing it. So that's how it works. Okay, saying that, let's move on to the very important slide right now. So this particular slide will help you to understand the complete the MLOps end-to-end pipeline, how it looks like. Okay, let's get started. So pay more attention for this. So now, see, ultimate aim for every organizations today, they're willing to move from automated ML workflows to the completely incorporated CI/CD practices. So this is where every organizations now they are trying to move. So what do you mean by that? So let's get started. So again, every organization, they get started from identifying the business use case. Let's consider that. Okay, every organization has some use case because we don't want to get into that. Now let's get started. The first part is the data. We do understand that your data might have a versions. Obviously, your business environment might change in the future. And again, this is where we integrate data version control tools, as I mentioned, DVC or any other tool, in order to version your data. And here comes the next step, the data pre-processing step. See, as part of a data pre-processing, here our data scientists or data engineers, they write a code, Python code, for example. And again, this code can able to change in the future. So that's how here we integrate code repositories like GitHub, code commit in AWS, or something on GCP, which is going to help us to version a code that we have written. So then comes a model building step. So here our data scientist will start training an ML model. Again, you'll be writing a code. This code will be also versioned by using a code repositories. So what is next? So now we are training an actual ML model. So now we're going to get the ML model right now, which is going to be part of final end product. As part of a model building, so now we have the code, and now we will be getting started with a model training process. So this is where we start taking a data, we start teaching the data to a machine. So, but here is a question. If you want to start training your machine with the data, you need a data. And again, your data will have a features. In order to extract the right features, we do use something called a feature store. So what is this feature store? So feature store is a schema repository where we keep all the schemas of our data. So what do you mean by that? So let's talk about the same example. Okay, let's talk about the electricity data consumption data that we're talking about. Let's say we do have a multiple features here. Let's say we do have a voltage, the current, and the bill amounts that you might have paid. And let's say we do have another feature called power. So combinations of, let's say, this features, voltage, current, and bill amount. Let's say this is a version 1 of your feature, and combination of all other features like version, current, bill, and power, this can be the version 2 of a feature. So why do we have a different versions in the future? Because by using a one single data set itself, you could able to solve multiple problems with multiple ML models for a same client. That means I'm going to use a first version of an ML model to predict the electricity bill forecast. The second version of a model, the second version of a features can be used for different problem that I want to solve. Perfect. So this is where the feature store comes to the picture. So feature store is not a database. We don't store our data there. We do store features and the version of that features. And we can able to use this schema of those features to extract the right kind of a data, and we started training an actual ML model. So once we have a model, so we will be having our model artifacts. So model artifacts is again a metadata with the actual ML model. And as we discussed, we might produce multiple versions of an ML model, and we need the right kind of a tools like model registries in order to register these ML models. So we might have version 1, version 2, version 3, blah blah blah. The different versions of a models will be versioned using this model registries. Perfect. Now we have all the versions of our model. Now I need to pick the best version of our model. Let's believe the version 3 is the latest one, which is working perfectly fine. So now I want to integrate this models to the CI/CD pipelines, and now I want to go ahead and start deploying the model to production. As we discussed, maybe you deploy it to the Dockers, Kubernetes, or maybe real-time endpoint. So based on your industry requirements, and now we started integrating it and start operating it in a production. And you can also integrate a feedback loops along with that, what we call it as a quality gates. So we do have two quality gates here. So one quality gate which is going to help you to decide the model that you're trying to register, whether it is a best model or not. So what do you mean by that? You can use this automated quality gates to decide the model that you're trying, it is fit to be deployed or fit to be registered to model registry. So here we hardly depends on the metrics that you're calculated. So consider that in data science, we do hardly depends on the metrics basically to decide whether it's a good model or not. So there are different kind of metrics does our data scientist calculates. For example, let's say here I'm going to stick to the MSE score. MSE stands for mean square error. So if my mean square error is less than or equal to 7, if this condition is satisfied, that means I'm going to register my model to model registry. Otherwise, if this condition didn't satisfy, I'm not going to register my model to model registry at all. So that's what exactly this quality gate can able to do. And you can also have an automated quality gates on a data preparation, data pre-processing side also. You can use data checkpoints to check whether your data is clean and it's free from outliers and other aspects that you want to check in terms of a data. Saying that, and again the foremost important thing is the end-to-end traceability. So just consider that this is the infrastructure that we're talking about. We do have an infrastructure for data versioning, code repositories, model training, resources, feature store infrastructures, model deployment infrastructure. So we need to have a complete end-to-end traceability. We do collect a lot of logs, metrics, including the metrics that we collect from our model monitoring tools, which is going to help us to understand again, to retrain your ML model again to produce a different version of a ML model. Okay, so to understand this even more simplest fashion, we call it something called a maturity levels for organizations. What do you mean by maturity levels? See, not every organizations today, they might implement the highest level of automation. So we call it as MLOps maturity level. So every organization, they start their journey from level 0. And they go to level 1, level 2, blah blah blah, they go for level 4. So the level 4 is the highest level of automation they can able to implement today in the market. So what is level 0? So level 0 is a no automation. So if there is an organization who is pre-processing a data manually using Jupyter notebooks, training their models and manually deploying their models, so they are in a level 0 basically. So once an organization goes to the next level, so level 1 will have some kind of a DevOps implementation. They might have source code repositories implemented, something like that. So once you go to level 2, this is where the MLOps and DevOps comes to picture. And level 4 is the highest level of implementation, what we call it as an automated retraining pipelines. What do you mean by that? Everything runs automatically. Your data preparation happens automatically, model training, model evaluation, model deployment, model monitoring, everything is completely automated in level 4 architecture basically. Perfect, isn't it awesome? So now you might have another question. Different roles involved in MLOps. So you might say, Sharath, I'm a data engineer, I'm a data scientist. I'm coming from solution architect background. I'm a DevOps professional. So where I will be fitted here, right? So the way you need to think it in a perspective, let's say, so when it comes to the MLOps roles, MLOps is not just for data scientists itself, it's for every stakeholder who is part of this particular journey. So for example, it's also for data analysts, data engineers, data scientists, DevOps team, or any, if you're an architect, for example, too. So let's try to understand the different responsibilities here. So developing successful machine learning project involves obviously varieties of experiences. It requires extreme collaboration among a team, obviously. The first thing, maybe the industry might ask, do I have enough resources? First of all, do I have enough employees at different kind of roles, what we are talking about, to make it happen? See, not every organization might have all these roles. Even there are organizations who might have more than these roles. It depends on an organization how they want to structure. So consider that there is an organization, so they might hire team of data scientists, team of ML engineers. So that, and there are organizations who hire one single person who has both data science and machine learning skill sets together. So there are organizations like that. So let's start from a data analyst. Okay, so what does our data analyst does? Obviously, they will be closely working with the product managers and business team, so to deliver insights from a user data. So they will be working with a lot of data visualization tools like SQL, Excel sheets, Tableau, Power BI, basically to drive an insight. So then we do have our data engineers, someone who is going to work with the data infrastructure to collect, transform, process, and store the data in uh, some kind of a storage platform. So where our data scientists can able to take the data for training an ML model. So obviously our data engineers, they will be also working with data version control tools, feature stores, what we discussed, and they will be also using other tools like Spark, Hadoop, big data tools, ETL tools, for example. So then we do have our dear data scientist, the person obviously who's going to build an ML model, which is going to be part of final end product. So then we do have someone called research or maybe applied scientist. So you might not see this kind of a roles in every organizations, but organizations who are going to work in a cutting edge technologies like Google, Amazon, Meta, for example. So they might have this kind of roles. So then we do have a ML engineer or machine learning engineer. So obviously, our machine learning engineer, they will be having their work overlap with data engineers. So, but they focus largely on ML models and related infrastructure. So they work with data scientists to deploy the model that is built by our data scientists to the production. So we don't call it as DevOps team, but we do call it as ML engineers in organizations, basically. So then we do have developers, obviously the last piece of a puzzle, we can say. Obviously the most important one. So they will be integrating everything with the main application. So they build the final end applications like web apps and Android apps, which is going to be used by your end users to invoke the models that you have built so far, right? So and again, we do have an infrastructure team. We call it as MLOps engineers. Someone who's going to manage the infrastructure, someone who's going to deploy this infrastructure. And again, we do have a lead peoples in MLOps, like we call it as MLOps architect, MLOps specialist. Those peoples actually designs an architecture, who decide what tool to be used, what tool to be not to be used, for example, something like that. Okay, saying that, let me just try to introduce to the world of tools here. So the different tools for MLOps. So this gets you an insights of what are the different variants of tool outside, but there are a lot of different tools, even they are available outside, but I didn't mention all the tools here, just to get some insights. So here we are looking for different varieties of tools. Let's say we need different kind of tools for data versioning, code versioning, experiment tracking, model registry tools, model monitoring tools, for example. So let's get into this particular slide. Let's get these insights. So we do understand the general workflow of building successful ML model. First thing is data. We collect the data, we start labeling it, then we do data preparation, data exploration. So once we have a data that is clean and prepared, so then we started training an actual ML model. So then once we have an ML model, we started deploying this ML model to production. That's how it works. So now let's try to understand, to make this happen, what are the different flavors of tools that we do have in a market. So here are the different kind of development IDs that we do use. Obviously we use Jupyter notebooks, or maybe any other IDs like PyCharm or maybe Spider, for example. For code versioning, we do use various different kind of repositories, depends on your organization. So maybe your organization want to integrate GitHub, Bitbucket, or something on AWS, something on Azure. And we do have data labeling tools. Every cloud platform, they have their data labeling tools. For example, AWS SageMaker has something called ground truth for that. So, and then we do have a data exploration and data visualization tools. Visualizing a data is very important when it comes to data science. We do use tools like Pandas or Matplotlib or a Seaborn, visualization tools to understand the data, trying to check if there's any outliers in it, something like that. For feature engineering, so obviously we use sklearn for that. Let's say if you're looking for any commercial tools, like you pay a subscription, everything will be managed by them. You can use tools like feature tools for that. And you can also use very famous open source tool called Feast for feature engineering also. So then for model training, so in order to train an ML model, you need an algorithm, a framework. So you might want to use a frameworks like XGBoost PyTorch or Keras or sklearn for building an actual ML model. So then for a quick POC, let's say if you want to build a quick POC, you want to go ahead and deploy your ML model for a POC, for a proof of concept. So maybe we use tools like, let's say, Streamlit, or maybe you want to deploy your ML model on a simple Jupyter notebook itself to test it. You can also use that for that. So then comes model debugging and visualization. So obviously for visualizing your models and you want to debug it, there is a range of tools like TensorBoard, weights and biases, for example. Or if you want to looking for a commercial tool, you can go for Neptune.ai. For model hyperparameter tuning or hyperparameter tuning optimization, there are different kind of SDKs. It can be Keras Tuner or Tune, or maybe different kind of SDKs that is provided by different cloud platforms. So then, very important thing is experiment tracking. We do understand in one single shot you cannot produce the best ML model. You might do multiple iterations to get an ML model, and you have a duty. You need to compare the different experiments. So for that, you can use the very famous tool MLflow, which can be the best ML model tracking experiment tracking tool. Or you can also use commercial tools like Neptune.ai or TensorBoard can be another example. Then comes model packing. Let's say now you want to pack your ML model for deployment. So you want to pack your ML model for TensorFlow or PyTorch. You want to use MLflow for that, or a Bento ML, or you want to pack your model as a jar files to be deployed on a SageMaker on AWS, for example. Or you want to deploy it to the very famous open source tool called Kubeflow. It's a framework that runs on Kubernetes. So then comes you want to serve your ML model. Maybe you want to deploy your ML model on a SageMaker endpoint, or you want to deploy it to Vertex AI and GCP or AML Studio, or to the Bento ML. So then comes a workflow orchestration. So the workflow orchestration tools, I mean, you need to build some kind of a workflow to see and visualize what is happening in your workflow, what to be happen first, what to be happen next. So in order to create this kind of a workflows, you can use open source tools like Apache Airflow, Kubeflow, ZenML, or Metaflow, or such other kind of tools. Are looking for commercial tools, you can also look for Olahai. So then comes data version control tools. We do understand the importance of versioning a data, isn't it, folks? There are different kind of data version control tools that is available in the market. So very famous tool that's outside in the market is called DVC, which stands for data version control tool. Our Git itself has a tool called Git large files. There are commercial tools like Neptune.ai, or weights and biases. And we did discuss about model registries, the tools that we use for versioning your models. MLflow can be a best example. Our weights and biases, our commercial tools like Olahai. So then comes model monitoring tools, plays very important role. So here it can be tools like Seldon or Fiddler, or maybe every cloud platforms today. It can be SageMaker, AML Studio, Vertex AI. They have their own SDKs to monitor your ML models in production. So then comes feature stores, as we discussed in a previous slide. You can go for a commercial feature stores. I mean, you don't want to manage anything on top of it. Everything is managed by these companies like Tecton, for example. Our AWS has SageMaker feature store, and you want to look for your own feature store, open source, completely free. You can look for Feast, for example. So these are the different kind of flavors of tools that is outside, but there are a lot of different tools that we're going to explore in this particular program also. Saying that, so now let's get started. Let's try to understand the key features of MLOps tools. Let's say we are talking about next 5 to 10 years. Let's say once you have more than 6 or 7+ years of experience, let's say you can look for a lead positions in MLOps, like MLOps architect, specialist kind of roles. So you will be the one who will be architecting, right? The entire architecture, the infrastructure, basically. So how are you going to pick a tool for your organization? Some of the guidelines. So whether you're going to pick open source tools or closed source tools, obviously we do understand open source tools are always free and you can able to easily integrate with your MLOps tools. But the difficult part is if you have very few developers who are aware about these open source tools, and if you have an open source tool with very less documentation and support, that can be difficult. Then comes platform versus specific tools. Are you going to go for a cloud-based tools? That means you have a more control on it. Are you going to go for a platform-based tools? I mean, let's say commercial tools, what we're talking about. Let's say there are a lot of private players that is outside where you can able to pay a subscription for them, and they got everything that you need, and you can go for a quickly to the market basically. So you're looking for that kind of a tool. Then comes model and production environment monitoring. So let's say you're going to pick a tool for your organization. You need to look for things like that MLOps tools offers the model monitoring and the complete infrastructure monitoring. So then comes model templating and cataloging plays a very important priority in picking a tool. So what do you mean by this model templating and cataloging? See, just try to imagine. So tomorrow you're going to work for an organization where you're going to build an automation for them. And that's not the only organization or maybe that's not the only client that you're going to work with. So tomorrow you're going to produce the success. You want to produce the same kind of a success for multiple organizations, maybe the thousands of organizations. So you don't want to reinvent a wheel again and again. So this is where model templating and cataloging comes to the picture. So when it comes to MLOps, it's all depends on the templating and cataloging. So we use the templates to replicate the success for other organizations. By making a minimal changes on this template, we can produce multiple success. Maybe today you might solve a problem for an organization. Maybe they're looking for NLP based use cases, LLMs, or maybe computer vision, or maybe clustering use cases, classification, any kind of use cases that you want to solve. So all you need template and customize it accordingly what you need. So then you need to look for a MLOps tool that could able to provide you model training, tuning, and drift management. We are talking about automation. So we need a pipelines where it can able to run automatically. I mean, automated data preparation, model training, model deployment, model monitoring, automated. So then comes pipeline management, very important aspect, because here we don't have only one person in a workflow. We do have multiple stakeholders: data engineers, data scientists, ML engineers, MLOps engineers. So here each and every person plays very different roles in this particular pipeline. So and again we need to have an automated trigger updates for this team. So consider that once the data preparation is over, our data preparation is failed, we need to notify a data engineer. And once the model training is passed or failed, we need to intimate a data scientist, the failure reports or success reports. So that plays very important role. So then comes collaboration and communication capabilities, because MLOps is all about collaboration and communication. So the tool that you're going to pick, you need to ensure that it could able to embed communication tools, whether your commands can be documented, questions, or let's say integrating project management tools like Jira, for example, or integrating tools like Slack, for example, for communication purpose, right? Something like that. So now let's talk about MLOps on top of a cloud. We are talking about the three different cloud platforms like AWS or Azure or GCP. Why cloud? You might ask a question. So this is the answer. So today the world runs beyond the cloud. The world runs on the cloud otherwise. So and again we are talking about the three different cloud platforms, that is AWS, Azure, GCP, because they are the major stakeholders outside in the market. And today most of the machine learning workloads runs on those three different cloud platforms. Yes, when it comes to our MLOps specialization program, we do cover three different clouds. I mean AWS, Azure, and GCP. Not just that, we do also cover open source tools. Why? So today the world runs on these three cloud platforms, but today world also believes on multi-cloud. So there are organizations who run their DevOps pipelines on Azure, but they run their machine learning workloads on AWS. There are organizations who might use AWS, but they also integrate a lot of open source tools with that, because we know that open source tools are free, and again it is easy to integrate, and again you can able to cut down some operational cost over there. So that's how it works. So let's try to understand what are the different flavors of tools that we do cover in our program. So Git based tools, we do cover tools understanding the Git. It can be GitHub or maybe something on AWS code commit, Google, that is GCP, Google Cloud repositories, or Azure repos, for example. So then comes understanding the CI/CD, so continuous integration and continuous deployment. So when we talk about CI/CD, again, it's a practice that is used in the software industry in order to deliver a new version of a software to production. So what we call it as continuous integration and continuous deployment. So the way it works, consider that here we have our code repositories where our developer makes some changes, and he introduces a new feature. He develops a new feature and he commits that code to the pipelines. And again, this pipelines will have a capability to understand automatically the changes that is made by our developers, and it will automatically trigger a build process. So what do you mean by that? So consider that here we are building a software. So consider that there is a Java application that our developer is making, and we want to build a Java application to create a jar files or to create a MSI files when it comes to the Microsoft installer, for example, right? Something like that. Basically, we are building and making a software. So once the build process is completed, we notify our developer saying that the build process is complete. The next, automatically, we started running a test on that particular software, and again once all the test has been passed, again we notify all the test has been passed. Software testing, what I'm talking about. So then we started thinking about delivering your software to a web application. So in order to understand this in a very simplest fashion, here we go. So consider that here we have a e-commerce website. Let's say it can be Amazon or any kind of e-commerce website that we're talking about. Let's say currently the production users has been served with a green color button. So what do you mean by that? Let's say you're buying some products in Amazon. Let's say you're going to hit on this green color pay now button in order to buy the product. So consider that. So most of the customers didn't like the green color button. So obviously the red is most attractive. And now our developer decides to change the color of a button from green to red. So now he's started developing in his environment. He's changing the button from green to red. And again, when it comes to the pipelines, here we are using the code pipelines on top of AWS, for example, which is a CI/CD pipelines. So here we are using GitHub as a repository where we do have two branches. One branch is dev, another branch is production. As I mentioned, I don't directly deploy the code to production. Instead of that, first I deploy it to dev, I test it. If I satisfied, then only I deploy the same code to production. So now initially my developer has deployed to code to dev, and again once the code is deployed to dev, automatically my code pipelines started building a software. It produces an artifacts. Then we started deploying this software to a web server. As I mentioned, initially I will be deploying my code to my dev environment. As of right now the button has been finally changed to a red color button, but this button has been changed to a dev team. So again, this dev environment is only accessible to your internal team, not to your end users. Again, you come here, you validate whether the button is working, whether the functionality is working, whether I can be able to click it. So if everything is working perfect and you have done with all the testing, so now you deploy the same button or a same code to production branch, and now your production users, I mean your end users, now started serving with your red color button. So that's how it works. Again, the same kind of a CI/CD practices can be followed to your MLOps pipelines. So consider that here we do have a code repositories. So again, here we have our data engineers and data scientists, someone who's going to write a code and he publishes a code. And once the code has been published automatically, and here our data pre-processing step starts automatically. So as I mentioned, the first step in a workflow is feature engineering or data pre-processing. So once the data pre-processing is done, so model training step happens automatically. So this is where we started producing an ML models, and then in the next step we started evaluating these ML models. So in order to evaluate whether it's a good model, can we go ahead and start registering this model to product model registry or not. So this is where the condition step comes into the picture. So this is what we call it as a quality gate, as we discussed in the previous slide. So this is where I have a condition where I'm checking. Consider that if my MSE score, let's say if my MSE score is less than or equal to 7, right? Whether it is less than or equal to 7, if this condition has been passed, so now I will go ahead and register my ML model to model registry. Otherwise, if this condition fails, I don't register my model to model registry at all. So that's how it works. So now I do have different versions of a models that is registered in my model registry. Let's say I pick up the latest version, the best version. I started building it by using my code pipelines. So let's say here we are dockerizing our ML model through our CI/CD pipelines, and once the dockerizing is done, now I'm going ahead and I'm started registering this ML model to a dev environment. I mean, I'm going to deploy my ML model to dev environment, and again your dev environment is for your internal team, and here comes our data scientist, for example, or any person who is responsible comes and evaluate the model that is deployed in a dev environment. You do all the testing that you need, and if you are satisfied with this dev environment response, now you go ahead and deploy the same model to production environment. So now your end users started serving with the newer version of a model that you deploy to a production environment. And again, you implement the model monitoring tools in order to monitor your ML model 24/7. So this is how the MLOps pipelines might also look. And when we talk about the different kind of CI/CD tools that we're going to cover, so it can be AWS code pipelines on top of AWS, which is integrated with AWS code commit, code build, and code deploy. And when it comes to GCP, we do have cloud build, cloud source repositories, artifact registries, or maybe cloud deploy, or maybe the cloud run. So when it comes to Azure, we do cover the entire Azure DevOps suite, starting from Azure pipelines, Azure artifacts, Azure test plans, Azure repos, and Azure boards. And again, we do understand the importance of open source tools. We do cover open source tools like Docker from scratch, understanding how to Dockerize your first ML model, deploying it and invoking it. And again, deploying, understanding Kubernetes from scratch, understanding how you can able to deploy the Dockerized ML model on a Kubernetes cluster. And we'll be also taking a look at the cloud-based Kubernetes platforms, which is managed Kubernetes platforms, like it can be Amazon EKS, Azure AKS, and GCP Kubernetes services too. So then comes model management tools. We do have we discussed about the importance of model management tools, especially like using tools like MLflow for model registry, and also MLflow also act as an experiment tracking tool, and using DVC for versioning your data, and also understanding other data version control tools like Git large files. So then comes feature stores. We'll be covering all of the different range of feature stores. Like we'll be talking about what SageMaker offers in terms of feature store, Vertex AI and GCP, what they offer. Databricks are talking about open source feature stores like Feast, or maybe building your own feature stores by using DynamoDB and S3. And then comes Cloud ML service. This is where we're going to spend time to build the complete end-to-end MLOps pipelines. What we're talking about, the level 4 architecture projects will be built on every cloud and every open source tool that we're talking about. So we'll be using Amazon SageMaker Studio, Vertex AI, or maybe Azure ML Studio to build at least one project in every cloud for level 4 architecture. Or let's say you're going to work for an organization who's going to completely work for open source tools. Let's say especially going to work for any Middle East based companies. They don't believe on a cloud, they want to use open source tools. So maybe you can use tools like Kubeflow for building end-to-end MLOps pipelines. Then comes model monitoring. So we do cover all the SDKs which is provided by all the cloud platforms for model monitoring, and we'll be also covering open source tools like Evidently AI in order to monitor your ML models in production also. And the another difference is we'll be also covering the automated ML tools, our commercial tools, what we call it. So we'll be also covering the commercial tools like Isguazio, Domino Data Labs, Olahai, Weights and Biases, etc. And then comes the post-deployment challenges. This is where the challenges comes into picture after you deploying your ML models to production. So we do have challenges related to software engineering. We do have challenges related to ML engineering. We do have challenges when you deploy your ML models to edge devices like IoT devices, or maybe to your mobile phones. Okay. Saying this, keeping everything in mind, what if I show you the live demo, the first excitement, the live demo that we have deployed. I mean, we do have deployed the end-to-end MLOps pipelines on top of AWS SageMaker Studio. I'm going to show you a demo. So the three things now, please make sure you stay till end of this particular program to get benefited out of this. The first thing is demo that I have planned. And again, still there are a lot of things to be talked to know what does the world looks like for the next 5 to 10 years when it comes to MLOps. And the third thing, you can able to download the free ebooks only if you stay till end of this particular program. So it's already 8:30, still we do have more than 30 minutes for this. Okay, so let's get started. So now I'm going to go to my SageMaker Studio console. Here we go. Here you could able to see my SageMaker Studio console. So where we have deployed our ML project, I mean the complete end-to-end MLOps pipeline. So I believe you should be able to see my screen. So this is what the SageMaker Studio, and I'm currently in my project. I have named my project as MLOps Demo Test. So this is going to be my end-to-end MLOps pipeline project. So you should be able to see we do have multiple sections here. So first thing, you should be able to see the repositories. Okay, you should be able to see that I do have 2 code repositories. As I mentioned, I have integrated code repositories. So one code repository for model building, another code repository for model deployment. Okay, so then comes pipelines. So here we have the pipeline section. this is where actually my pipeline is running. So if I go inside this pipeline group, you should able to see that I do have executions. I have my pipeline executed only once. So you should able to see that my pipeline executed only once. I have an entry and the status of a pipeline is succeeded. This pipeline got executed 2 hours ago. It took an average of 12 minutes, 23 seconds to execute this particular pipeline. What do you mean by that? Let's say my pipeline is executed once. That means for every execution, you produce one version of a ML model. So if I execute it twice, you have 2 versions. So as of right now, my pipeline is executed once. That means I have only one version of ML model. But let's try to understand the workflow. If I go inside this workflow, I can able to check this graph. So this is what we call it as a workflow, right? So now, before we getting started, let's try to understand what is a use case. So what is a use case that I have worked here? So here I have built this end-to-end ML pipelines in order to solve the problem of an abalone. So basically in order to predict an age of an abalone. So what do you mean by this? So what do you mean by predicting an age of an abalone? So in case if you're a seafood lover, you might have heard about abalones. Probably, let's say this is a kind of a sea snail. I mean, it's an edible thing. We could able to cook and we could able to eat it definitely. So this abalones are basically looks like a shells. Basically inside this particular shell, you can able to find a meat which is edible. So basically, I mean, we are trying to predict an age of an abalone. So why it is required? Why we need to use machine learning for this. So basically to predict an age of an abalone is a tedious process without using machine learning, let's say. So we use microscopes in order to find the complex ring formations on top of this abalones to predict an age of an abalone. So in order to solve this complex process of finding age of an abalone, we do use machine learning for this. So for that, we have built end-to-end MLOps pipelines. So the first step or first stage in my pipelines is pre-processing an abalone data. So this is a block which explains what I've done. So if I click on pre-process abalone data, here you should be able to see that. So as part of an output, if I check, so this is where as part of a pre-processing, I'm splitting my data into 3 chunks. I'm splitting my data to training data, validation data, and test data. So I'm splitting my data into 3 different chunks. And again, this data is being stored in some kind of a storage platform on top of AWS, which is nothing but S3 basically. So S3 is a storage platform that we have used in order to store our data sets here. So then the next stage in our workflow is to train an abalone model. If I click on train an abalone model, this is where we start teaching a data to a machine and we produce an ML model. So here, as part of a model training, so we do evaluate a lot of different metrics. So again, here you should be able to notice I have evaluated RMSE score on my training data, which is nothing but root mean square error value is 1.5, and the validate on top of validation data, RMSE score is around 2.0. So and again here you can able to find my actual ML model. So when it comes to SageMaker produced tar.gz files. That's where your ML model will be compressed into tar files. And again, this model will be stored in S3 bucket, which is nothing but a storage platform on top of Amazon Web Services. So then once we have a model, what do we do next? So the next step in our workflow is evaluating your ML model. See, as part of an evaluation, so this is where I evaluate the metrics. This is where I calculate metrics. See, as part of evaluating abalone model, here I calculate MSE score. Here I calculate standard deviation or any kind of a metrics that you need to decide whether it is a good model or a bad model. See, once I have a metrics evaluated, I store this metrics as a JSON document in the S3 bucket. Okay, so once I have this evaluation metrics stored in a bucket, so then I use the quality gate. Do you remember that we are talking about a quality gate? Here, the quality gate name is check MSE abalone evaluation, which is actually helping me to decide whether it is a good model. Can I deploy it? Can I register that to model registry or not? So do you remember that we discussed about, okay, in case if my MSE score, let's consider that if my MSE score is less than or equal to 7, I register my model to model registry, otherwise I don't register. So now let's check out what is my MSE score is, whether it is less than or equal to 7. So right now, as part of my quality gate, the output is true. That means my MSE score is actually less than or equal to 7. If I check, my check MSc abalone evaluation, all I got as an output is true. But now let's go to our model registry. So this is where my model registry is. It's called register abalone model registry. If I go ahead to my model registry, you can check the actual MSc score is, which is 4.8, which is nothing but, yes, 4.8 is less than or equal to 7. That means my model has been registered to model registry. So that's how the quality gate works. And now I have my model successfully registered to my model registry. So now let's go ahead and let's check it out, my actual model registry. If I go to my projects, and here the next section you can see, it's called experiments. Do you remember that we did had a discussion? In a one single shot you cannot produce the best version of a model. You might do multiple iterations in order to produce the best quality of an ML model. So here is an experiment section where you can able to find all the experiments that I conducted. So there are so far 3 experiments that I conducted for this model training process. And let's go to the model groups, what we call it as model registry in SageMaker Studio. So model groups, here we do have one model group. If I go inside this particular model group, here we go. Here you can able to find the first version of your ML model. So as of right now, my pipeline has executed only once. Obviously, I will be having only one version of ML model. So if my pipeline executed twice or thrice, I might have multiple versions of ML model. So try to observe my screen, what it says. My version 1 of a model is available, but it's pending for model approval. As I mentioned, once I have a model, I don't go ahead and register my model to or I don't go ahead and deploy my model to dev or production environment automatically. Instead of that, I do have a manual approval process. Let's say I am a senior data scientist. I go ahead manually, I approve this ML model to be deployed to dev or production. So now, as part of an architecture that we have discussed, the first step in our workflow, we're going to deploy our ML model to dev environment first. We are not going to deploy our model to production first. We're going to deploy our ML model to dev environment. So now let me show you how am I going to deploy this model to dev environment first. In order to deploy the first version of ML model, I'm going to click on this version 1. I go to this particular screen and you can see that the status of a deployment is pending. I go to actions button on the top right side. I will simply update the status from pending to approve. If I click on this approve, so I get a pop-up. So here, as a data scientist or senior data scientist or anyone who is responsible for this, I do check my model. I put up some commands saying that approved, something like this. So then I go ahead and I click on save and update. So this particular changes that I made, it's going to deploy my ML model to dev environment. So now you should be able to see that the status of my model version 1 has been approved. So right now I'm deploying my ML model to dev environment, not to production yet. So how do I check the model deployment process? You can go to this endpoint section in the root directory of your project. You can find something called endpoints. This is where you can able to notice that your ML model is getting deployed to a dev environment. So now you cannot find any status here. It says no endpoints. So it's going to take a few minutes to reflect. So let's wait for a few minutes, then we can able to check it out. In the meantime, we wait, we'll go back to our slides, we'll discuss further, so then we will come back. So now our live demo is in progress, but now let's try to answer the third question, the MLOps job industry, right? So who should learn MLOps in the first time, right? Let's have a discussion about that. Who will be part of MLOps? Who should learn MLOps? You might be having a question, right? So you might be a data scientist, or you might be a data engineer, or you might be a data analyst. You might be a research or applied scientist. You might be an ML engineer, or you might be a DevOps engineer who want to transform into AI, or let's say into AI industry. Or you might be an aspiring MLOps professional or enthusiast. Or you might be looking forward for learning model deployment, right? Or you want to learn how Docker, Kubernetes, AWS, GCP, or Azure, or DVC, or Feast, or MLflow works for automation building process in order to deliver ML models to production. Or you might be an individual interested in data or AI industry. So you're the best person to be learning MLOps basically. So now let's try to understand what does the numbers looks like, right? You can be any person in some fashion that you're going to be part of the AI industry. So you might be working in an infrastructure team, right? So working as an infrastructure, as a core team, or maybe you might be an architect, solution architect, someone who is already building a scalable architectures for your organizations. I mean, any kind of an organizations, you can be a best person to get started. Perfect. What does the numbers looks like? Here we go. So what does an average salary for a person looks like? So I'm talking about a person who has an at least 2 to 3 years of experience, right? In India. Let's talk about the numbers in India first, then we'll go for global. So an average salary for someone who's going to have a 2 to 3 years of experience, someone who has an MLOps skill sets on their resume, an average salary according to sixfigure.com is 23 lakhs in India. And when it comes to a global market, let's say when it comes to US, it's going to start from 94,000 dollars per year for someone who's going to have an MLOps skill set on their resume. And again, we did already had a clear-cut validation. How does the market looks like for the next 5 to 10 years? So do you remember that a quick chit chat that we had? What are the two things that world is going to talk about for the next 50 or 100 years? The first thing is they're going to talk about pandemic, the COVID. The next thing is AI, right? So obviously the jobs in AI industry, the ML job vacancy trends is really picking up. So the quick validation for this, every industry that we're talking about, it can be an industry who is into IT or non-IT. So they want to integrate AI in some fashion. And AI, an organization who is working for a space sector, or organization is working in a farming sector, every industry is trying to implement AI in some fashion. And again, there are different stakeholders as part of building this ML models. And again, how quickly it's happening. So let's try to understand the speed of transformation. Here is the best example that I want to mention for all my audience. Just try to imagine what just happened between 2009 and 2019. How does this drones got completely changed the market? I mean, the movie making market, or maybe just imagine before 2009, like we do have a news reporters, movie makers going in a choppers and carrying a huge cameras for shooting a simple maybe a movie or maybe the news report. So this particular industry completely got replaced in just 10 years. I'm talking about this drones, how to go the market. And again, the best answer is the market is not going to wait for anyone, right? So the market is not going to wait for anyone. So the time is not going to wait for anyone, right? So again, the quick validation for what is the right time to get into MLOps, or what is the right time to upskill yourself into MLOps? This is what the data says. And again, this is a data that we collected from AWS AI Conclave, which happened in Bangalore, India. So, and again, so last 5 years, if you consider that any data scientists or data engineers, if they're good at data, algorithm, Python programming, they are hired. But that situation completely got changed. If you're a data scientist today, if you got good data science skill sets, probably that might not be enough. So unless if you're not good at, okay, the question, if you check out the job descriptions, it says, are you good at building, I mean, deploying your models to production? Do you have a knowledge in CI/CD, model monitoring tools, right? As someone who's going to work in an infrastructure, do you have a knowledge on how to build the pipelines, the scalable pipelines? Do you have knowledge in deploying the infrastructures on a cloud like AWS or Azure or GCP? That's how the world looks like right now. Yeah, saying this, how can we help you to become a specialist in MLOps? This is where our MLOps specialization program comes into the picture. So we are getting started with the specialization program on MLOps, what we call it as machine learning specialization course, starting from January 6th. It's a 7 weekends program. Otherwise, we are talking about a complete 2 months program starting from January, going to end at February. So we are talking about the live hands-on program starting from January 6th. So this is a program on every weekends. I mean, every Saturday, Sunday, we'll be having a session, not on weekdays. Don't worry about that. So every Saturday, Sunday, 4 hours Saturday, 4 hours Sunday. Let's say if you're joining from IST time zone. So every 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., 4 hours Saturday and 4 hours Sunday. Let's say you're coming from EST time zone. So you'll be starting your session from 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Let's say you're joining from CET time zone. Your time will be 3:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Let me give you the structure of a program, which is more interesting. So as I mentioned, every weekend we'll be having a live session. So 85% of a curriculum that we do have is a completely hands-on program. So when I'm talking about live sessions, it's not a webinar or a seminar. You just don't come and listen and go. Instead of that, you'll be busy building a lot of projects. I mean, every project that I build on my screen, parallelly will be replicating on your screen. So that's how interactive it's going to be. And every Monday, you'll be receiving an access to the recordings of your live sessions. And even on weekdays, we do have something called debugging sessions. So what is this debugging sessions? So consider that we are talking about an MLOps program. So where multiple tools, multiple dependencies has to work together to build the complete hands-on project. So you might have some bugs, some errors you couldn't resolve it during a live sessions. You'll be joining a debugging sessions. We might conduct debugging sessions on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So you can able to pick the time that you're available, and you can join, and where I'm going to help you to fix the problem that you have. So it's going to one-on-one. Debugging sessions are going to be one-on-one. And when we talk about our MLOps specialization program, yes, as I mentioned, we do cover multi-cloud. So this program covers AWS, Azure, GCP, and open source tools. See, another view of this. So basically, once you upskill yourself in MLOps specialization course, you opens doors yourself to work for any different organization in this world. So consider that you can literally work for any AI industry because the world runs on these 3 cloud platforms, and you do also have a skill sets on open source tools, right? And again, as we discussed, this is a 70 hours program. There are more than 50 plus live hands-on projects, 50 plus live hands-on labs, and 10 plus real-time industry projects. What do you mean by that? So as we discussed, we are talking about the maturity level. So starting from level 0 to level 4 maturity projects. So we'll be covering all the different levels, starting from level 1 to level 4. So level 4 is where we need to really more focus on, because which is a complete end-to-end MLOps automated retraining pipelines. At least one project in every cloud will be covered. So one project in every cloud, end-to-end MLOps pipeline, the level 4 architecture project will be built on every cloud. At least one project in every cloud will be covered on top of DevOps. And at least one project on every open source tool that we're talking about, starting from understanding Dockers from scratch, Kubernetes, MLflow, Kubeflow from scratch will be covered. So before we talking about the pricing structure of our program, so let's go back and let's check it out. Let's check it out what's really happening in our deployment process of our ML model. Okay, so then we'll come back. So then we'll discuss about the pricing. So please make sure you stay till end of this particular program. Still, we do have 20 minutes to end this particular program. I'm going to also open my session for queries. Definitely, we're going to talk about that. Okay, so now let's go back to our studio. Okay, here we go. So now I'm finally back to my studio. And now you should be able to notice there is some changes. I'm in the endpoints, and now you should be able to see that my model has been successfully deployed to my dev environment. You can see it says MLOps demo test staging environment, and it is in service. I mean, my dev environment is live. If I double click, so I'm going to copy my endpoint name, and if I go to this AWS settings, so this is where you can able to find this REST API, which will be used by your developer in order to build application like client application like Android app, web app, anything. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly show you how I'm going to invoke this ML model through my Jupyter notebook itself. Here is a simple Python script that I'm running, and here is my data set, which is abalone single data set, which is going to have the features, and it's going to predict an age of an abalone. So now I'm going to replace the name of my endpoint with the current name of mine, which is MLOps demo test staging. And here I'm going to pass my input data, and here I'm calling my endpoint. I'm going to invoke my endpoint by calling SageMaker runtime invoke endpoint. Here I given my endpoint name and my data set, and here I print the results. So let's save it. Let me run it. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. So here is the age of an abalone. So 9.64 is an actual age of an abalone, which the farmers can able to use it to decide what is the pricing that I can able to fix for this abalone to sell it in the market right now. So this is how the model has been deployed, and now I'm invoking this ML model, which is running in a dev environment. So, and again, they're running in a different machines. Okay. So now, so this is how I have deployed my ML model to dev environment. In the next step, I'm going to show you how I'm going to deploy my ML model to production environment. To know how to deploy the model to production environment, make sure you stay till end of this particular program. Okay, now let's go back to our slide. Let's have a discussion about the pricing structure. The pricing structure is going to be really interesting. Lot to discuss on that. Let's have a discussion. And we do also have some surprise for you, only if you stay till end of this particular program. Okay, so here is a pricing structure in INR. I'm talking about Indian rupees. We don't have one pricing structure. Instead of that, we do have a 3 different pricing structure. That's the interesting part. Yes, as I mentioned, we do have a 3 different pricing structure. The actual price for our MLOps specialization program, we do have a plan called Advanced Plus plan starting from 47,999. And we do have an advanced plan which is starting from 41,999. And we do have a basic plan which is starting from 39,999. That's interesting, right? But you might have a question. Why 3 different plans? What's the difference between that? Let me just explain. This is going to be quite interesting. Okay, so why we do have this 3 different pricing plans, you can able to pick what exactly that you need. So it is more customized for you what you needed from this particular program. So let's say you want to go for a basic plan. So usually working professionals, they pick either advanced or maybe advanced plus. But what is a basic plan? So basic plan is just designed for upskilling yourself. So that means, let's say you're looking for live sessions. Yes. And let's say you're looking for an access to the recordings of a live session that you attended. And let's say you need a debugging session that I discussed. So you can go for a basic plan. So just to upskill yourself. And let's say if you're going for advanced or maybe advanced plus plan. So here you get some additional premium support. What do you mean by that? Obviously, everything in basic is included. You can also attend live sessions. In advanced plan, advanced and advanced plus, you can also access to recordings, debugging sessions also included. But there is some additional premium support when it comes to advanced and advanced plus. What is that? So when it comes to our advanced plan, we do have a feature called bonus reattendance opportunity. What do you mean by bonus reattendance opportunity? That means by signing up once, you can take this program twice. Yes, that means, let's say you have signed up for our January batch. Even after you completing our January batch, you can retake our April batch also completely for free. So the 2 upcoming batches, you can take it for free. So why we need to have these features? Because 98% of our professionals who take our program, I mean 98% of our folks are working professionals. They're really busy. They're making their time to attend this particular program. Sometimes they miss live sessions. I mean 25 to 25% of times they miss live sessions. They ask a question, so will I get another chance to retake this particular program? Yes, when it comes to advanced plan, you get twice the chance. You don't miss out anything from this particular program. That can be one aspect. Another aspect, let's say you need a revisioning once again in the next batch. Here we go, you have a chance. Another aspect, let's say each and every batches, there might be some changes in the curriculum. Maybe you need to learn new things. So here we go, you have a chance to learn it. So then we do have resume preparation support and 6 months of technical job support. What do you mean by that? Here comes a very important aspect. Obviously, most of the professionals want to upskill themselves and they want to work for a better position in a better company. So here, first thing is a resume preparation. So what do you mean by resume preparation? What do we do? First thing, we try to understand the participants. We do give a consulting. So then let's say we try to understand what kind of a role, the position that you're looking forward. So maybe you want to work for a data scientist, maybe you want to work for ML engineering, MLOps engineering, and you might have 4 years of experience, you might have a 15 years of experience. So which kind of a position works for you? We try to understand that and we try to bias your resume accordingly. Perfect, right? So then when it comes to the 6 months of technical job support, we work in 2 aspects. The first aspect, the first categories of participants is, so they want to go and work for an organization. So here, when it comes to technical job support, we do help him in preparing for an interview. So what do we do? So let's say optimizing a resume is not just about, let's say, not just about preparing your resume. It can be optimizing any job portal that you have, helping you optimizing your LinkedIn, putting up a right keywords, Naukri or any job portals like Indeed that you have. So just to make sure that you get some quality calls, right? So then let's say you've got shortlisted for an interview. Let's say you're going for technical round. So here we play very important role. So what do? So we ask for a quick discussion. We ask for bring a job description. Let's try to decode the job description that you have. So basically we will try to provide insights, try to understand what kind of a question they're going to ask you. How are you going to answer that? Let's say you have mentioned some of the projects that we have built it in our program on your resume. How are you going to deliver the stories about that particular project? So we're going to discuss those insights, and it's already working for our participants who have taken our program in our previous batches. You can also check the testimonials of them. You'll get some better view and answers. Okay, so this is about the one categories of participants. So another category of participants, they use a job support in a way that, let's say you're already working in an organization, you need some insight, some good documentation, you're building some prototypes, you need some sample codes, you need some architecture to get started. We do also support you in that way. So this is about our advanced plan. So we do have another plan called Advanced Plus. Everything in Advanced is included, but instead of getting 6 months of support, you get 1 year of support here. But there is another feature, we call it as instant access to recordings. What do you mean by that? Still, we do have almost 15 days for live sessions to get started. And even though, let's say, once we start from 6th of January, we do have 2 months to complete a program. So you don't want to wait 2 months or 3 months to complete a program. You can get started with this program immediately. I mean, folks who are going to register for Advanced Plus plan, they're going to get instant access to our recordings of our previous batch, which the batch got ended last 3 weekends ago. So you get access to recordings with the support from us. You can start watching the recordings whenever you want. Parallelly, you can start attending the live sessions from 6th of January. So that's the features. So if you're looking forward the pricing structures in USD, it will look something like this. An Advanced Plus plan starts from $699 only, and our Advanced plan, which starts from $599, and our basic plan just starts from $549. So that's how you can able to pick what are the plan that perfectly suits for you. And obviously, so deciding that you have spent your valuable 2 hours of time with me, so they don't be, I mean, so good. Like we are just arriving to a Christmas and the New Year. So we do have a surprise for you. So we are offering the discounts like never before for this Christmas and for this New Year. So there are not one, there are more than 3 kind of discounts that we are offering. And again, we do have a choices here. So one is a free upgradation offer. Another one is a discounted offer. So what is the difference? What is a free upgradation and what is a discount? But so these offers are strictly limited to 26th January because we are providing these offers from the first weekend of December. So this is almost, we are in the mid of a campaign. So these offers are still till 26th of December. Still you have a time to decide. Okay, let's talk about these exciting offers that we do have. So what is the first offer we're going to discuss? The first Christmas offer is free upgradation offer. So what is this free upgradation offer that we're talking about? So most of the working professionals, they want to go for either advanced plan or Advanced Plus plan, right? So you want to go for advanced plan or Advanced Plus plan. So what do? So if you want to go for advanced plan, don't register for advanced plan. So don't register for advanced plan. That's what I'm trying to say. So go ahead and register for a basic plan. So what I'm trying to say, so go ahead and register for a basic plan. The basic plan is just costing $39,999, but we will be upgrading you to advanced plan completely for free. Only folks who are going to register before 26th of January, and strictly we do have for first 10 registrations only, we can able to do this free upgrade because we cannot afford this. Okay, so the same thing applies for Advanced Plus plan. So let's say you're looking for the topmost plan, the Advanced Plus. Let's say you want to get started with this particular program in next 24 hours itself. Go ahead and register for advanced plan. So advanced plan is just costing you $41,999, but we will be upgrading you to Advanced Plus plan in next 24 hours. You can get started with this particular program strictly for 10 registrations till 26th of December. So just try to understand the difference between advanced and Advanced Plus plan is 6,000 rupees. You can save around 6,000 rupees. The difference between basic and advanced plan is 2,000 rupees. You can save around 2,000 rupees. So this is our offer number 1, or option number 1, the discount. So now it's time to discuss the option number 2, the Christmas offer. The option number 2, we call it as a discounted offers. Folks, here we are providing 3 different kind of discounts, but you cannot climb all the discounts together. You can choose any of the option number 1 or option number 2. So in option number 2, here you can get a maximum of 5% discount on, I mean, the 5% price cut on basic plan. Or when you're going to choose an advanced plan, you can get again 5% price cut. Or when you're going to choose an advanced plus plan, the topmost plan, you can get the 10% price cut on advanced plus plan. So that means, let's say you will be price will be coming down. Alternatively, if you don't want the price cut, you can go for a no cost EMI offer that we are providing on a basic plan and advanced plus. So that means, so probably you might understand the EMI option. So we are not talking about the normal EMI. Let's say if you're going for a normal EMI, you'll be paying some additional interest rates. Let's say if a course is costing 39,000 rupees, so you'll be paying around 43,000 rupees with EMI option. So you don't want to go for this option. We do provide a no cost EMI. So in that particular way, let's say your basic plan is costing 39K. So you'll be exactly paying 39K in a 3 different installments. So let's say if it is an advanced plan, which is costing 41K, so you'll be paying in 6 installments. You'll be paying an average of 6,000 rupees only, but you don't pay any additional interest rates. If you have a valid credit cards, you can go for the EMI options. Otherwise, you can also get this price cut. And again, this is strictly for 10 registrations only till 26th of December. So this is about our office. And again, so let me just quickly go ahead and start sharing the links for you to quickly go ahead and start registering for this particular program. Here we go. Here are the links that I promised for you folks. The first link I'm going to share where you can able to click and start registering for this particular program. And the second link where you can able to download a curriculum. Yes, we're going to have a discussion about a curriculum right now. And the third link where you can able to download the free ebooks as I promised. And here is our contact information. Please feel free to call me. I suggest you to call me if you need some consulting before you getting started with this particular program. I would suggest you to call us in any of this number. So I will be available to pick this particular call. Here we go. So I'm going to share this links in the chat window. I have shared it already. So once you click on this first link, so you'll be redirected to this particular website. So where you can able to start registering yourself actually. Okay. So now you can able to find the complete details in this website. I mean, you can able to find all the curriculums. We do have 13 modules. We'll have a discussion right now. And you can able to find the tools, and you can also find the testimonials of our previous batch participants. I would suggest you to go ahead and listen to this testimonials. It will be hardly 5 to 10 minutes. You'll get some more insights about what does our participants talks about our training, how does their success looks like after completing. So now let's quickly go ahead and start discussing about the curriculum that we are offering. Okay. So I will be a trainer. Yes, Ishwar, I will be the trainer for this particular program. No doubt about it.
I would like to have a
perfect. So I'm going to open this Q&A in 2 more minutes. You folks can ask a lot of questions that you have. Quickly, let me just discuss this curriculum. So then we will get started. Okay. Perfect. So I have also shared the link for this particular PDF where you can find everything in this. You can click on the second link to download that. Okay. Perfect. Let me just quickly go to the curriculum section. We do have 13 modules in this particular program, 1-3. The first module will be getting started with MLOps introduction. So this is where we're going to introduce to the world of MLOps. So again, we're going to talk about the challenges, the components, the life cycle, and more than that, here we're going to talk about the more differences. We're going to talk about what is DevOps, what is AI Ops, what is Model Ops, what is GitOps. And the more important thing that we're going to discuss in this module is CI/CD production case studies. I mean, we're going to talk about the actual case studies of an organization, how they have implemented pipelines on AWS or Azure or GCP or open source tools. Then comes module number 2. Here we're going to talk about ML and MLOps stages. So here we're going to dive deep into versioning. What are the different kind of versionings we do? Testing, CI/CD, reproducibility, deployment, and monitoring. More importantly, here we're going to discuss about the architectures, like MLOps architectures, like talking about open source tools like Kubeflow, Apache Airflow, MLflow, Metaflow, Kedro, ZenML, MLrun, and CML. And we'll be also talking about the cloud native tools, like talking about AWS, GCP, Azure architectures for MLOps. So then if we go to module number 3, so this is where we will be diving into the Git from scratch. Obviously, we'll be doing a lot of hands-on. So all the modules which mentions hands-on, that means we'll be building up projects over there. So we'll be starting from Git from scratch, understanding how to use Git on all the clouds, any kind of a repository that we're talking about. So then comes module number 4, Introduction to CI/CD. So this is where we'll be covering DevOps on all the clouds. So here we'll be covering AWS DevOps tools like AWS code commit, code pipelines, code build, code deploy, and one project will be built. One DevOps project will be built on top of AWS. So here we'll be learning DevOps for MLOps. Then comes GCP DevOps tools and one project on DevOps on top of GCP. And we'll be covering the complete Azure DevOps suite, and we'll be building one project on Azure DevOps. And then comes, let's say, module number 5, Dockers and Kubernetes. So this is where we will be covering Dockers from scratch and Kubernetes from scratch. And one project will be built on top of Dockers, understanding how to Dockerize your ML model, deploying it and testing it. Then comes understanding the complete Kubernetes, and we'll be also learning how to create a Kubernetes cluster, deploying a model, invoking this model. Then comes module number 6. So here we'll be learning the Kubernetes deployment strategies, picking one of a cloud like AWS or Azure or GCP to deploy a model, create a cluster, deploy a model, and invoking it. Then comes module number 7. So here we're going to talk about model management tools, especially open source tools for data versioning, code versioning, experiment tracking, model registry, and model monitoring. So this is where we'll be learning tools like MLflow. Here you'll be learning how to deploy the MLflow infrastructure and building, training, and deploying your ML models through MLflow infrastructure. Then comes module number 8, feature store. We do have a separate module for feature store. We'll be discussing about various different feature stores, starting from SageMaker feature store, Vertex CI, Databricks, Tekton, Feast, or HubSpot. And we'll be picking one of a very famous open source feature store, that is Feast, and we'll be building the live hands-on project, building online feature store and offline feature store. Then comes module number 9, Cloud ML Service 101. So this is where we're going to build this level 4 architecture project on every cloud. When it comes to AWS, we'll be picking AWS SageMaker pipelines or SageMaker Studio to build complete end-to-end MLOps pipeline. On top of GCP, we'll be covering Vertex CI for building complete end-to-end MLOps pipeline. On top of Azure, we'll be using MLOps version 2 architecture, which is the latest architecture which is provided by Azure ML Studio. So, and again, this level 4 architecture projects will take at least one complete weekend to cover. I mean, that's how huge it is. Let's say if we started doing a hands-on on a Saturday, it will end on Sunday. That's how huge those projects are. Then comes module number 10. So Kubeflow, as we discussed, let's say if an organization want to completely go open source. If you believe Kubeflow is an, let's say if you are aware about Spotify does uses Kubeflow for their ML pipelines. So we'll be covering Kubeflow for deploying the infrastructure and building, training, and deploying your ML models over there. Perfect. So then comes module number 11. Here we do have a separate module for model monitoring. And here we do cover all the SDKs on all the cloud platform for model monitoring. And we'll be also picking one of a cloud to monitor your ML models. And module number 12, Introduction to AutoML tools, will be also covering the commercial tools, and we'll be also providing a demo on commercial tools, because commercial tools is not something that you can afford because they are subscription platforms. Then comes the final module, the module number 13, the post-deployment challenges. We'll be talking about the post-deployment challenges like model latency issues, the security-related challenges, and we'll be also picking one of a model monitoring tool, the open source tool, Evidently AI, for monitoring it. And if you scroll further, you can also see the skills that you will be mastering from this particular program and the tools that we will be covering. And if you further scroll down, you can check the test, the pricing structure. And you can also find the testimonials over here. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to open the session for Q&A. You can also unmute your mic. You can also talk to me, and you can also mention your queries in the chat window. Go ahead, please.
Hey, hi Sarthak, very nice presentation. I just loved it. Thank you so much. And it's
hey, sorry, like I believe we could able to hear you, but you're not loud enough. If you don't mind, can you please talk a bit louder? And when you're talking, please do mention your name and what kind of a work that you're doing. So then we can have a conversation. Please go ahead. So meantime, let me answer the questions. Who will be a trainer? I will be a trainer. Ishwar, I will be a trainer for this particular program. Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, now I'm able to hear me.
Perfect, loud enough. Please go ahead. Yep.
Okay. So great.
Go ahead, please.
Uh,
Yep.
so thank you so much for this wonderful workshop.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
So I have few queries. I want to see. I have 18 years of experience in coming one of the
Perfect.
company heading the AIML department and MLOps. I've already implemented certain MLOps. I'm looking for a group training for my team. Uh, so that's what I wanted to discuss. Maybe I'll call you for that. I'm giving you my number. I'll call you from this number. Maybe we can have a discussion on the training for the same program for this say 7 weekends.
Sure. Perfect. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yep. Yep. Okay, so let me just answer a few of your questions in the chat window. Please make sure you unmute your mic. You can also talk to me. So let me just quickly answer a few questions that you folks asked in our chat window. Okay, so here we have Page asked a question: does a prior coding experience required for learning to get job in MLOps? So the answer for this, it depends on the kind of a role that you're going to focus on. Let's say, for example, let me just go back to my slides. Okay, so consider that you're going to say that I am a data scientist, or let's say you're going to say that I'm a data engineer, I'm a data scientist. So if you're going to ask a question, so do I need a coding experience to get into MLOps? 100% yes. In case if you're going to apply yourself as a data scientist or data engineer, because you're going to definitely need an in-depth knowledge on Python, statistics, mathematics, algorithms to be a part of MLOps. But otherwise, let's say we're going to say that I'm a DevOps professional, right? Otherwise, let's say I'm a solution architect, coming from solution architect background, a data analyst. So let's say, but you're focusing into the different roles here. Let's say I mentioned, let's say you want to become MLOps engineer, or let's say you have a more than 7+, 8+ years of experience. Let's say you want to look for lead positions like MLOps lead engineer, MLOps architect specialist. So definitely you don't build ML models here. You don't make your hands dirty. You don't write a program to build an ML model, but that is something that is done by a data scientist. But you don't need an expertise like a data scientist or data engineer, but having some a basic understanding of programming here would definitely help you. So consider that when it comes to DevOps peoples, see, DevOps peoples comes with some added advantage. See, they are already coming from DevOps background. They do understand the CI/CD, the source version control, but they have no idea what our data scientist is doing, what our data engineers are doing. So, but all they need to have some good awareness of what exactly a data scientist is doing, what exactly our data engineer is doing. And if you have a very basic understanding of programming, would definitely help you. So that would be the answer basically. Yeah. And again, so we do have some free resources that we give away, especially let's say if a folks want to brush up their Python skills. But again, this is a pure MLOps program. So here we don't teach data science for you. We don't teach Python programming for you. We don't teach, the basics of data science for you, which is completely out of a scope. But that doesn't mean that we don't build ML models here. We build ML models, we do data engineering. So we go through each and every line of a script. And again, we do have some external additional resources, especially if someone want to brush up their Python skills, we give this additional resources, which is not part of this particular program. But okay. Okay, let me just answer some of the questions. Okay. Sakit, sorry if I'm pronouncing your names wrong. So MLOps course curriculum downloaded link is not working. Please check. Okay, so let me just quickly share this links once again in a chat window. So all you need to do, just go ahead and start clicking on this link. Let's say once you click on this curriculum link, you will be redirected to a page like this. That's it. All you need to do, just go ahead and click on the link that I shared. So you'll be redirected to a page which will look like this, and you can able to find the PDF, and you can simply click download button over there. So I've shared the link once again for you folks. Okay, perfect. So let me know if anyone else has some questions. You can also unmute your mic and you can talk to me, and we just take a few questions.
Are we going to cover like live streaming data in this, like while monitoring and uh, like
Okay, you mean okay, especially for model monitoring, what you're talking about, am I right?
yeah.
Okay, that's a correct question. So let me just help you how things work. Okay, so let's say that's a good question that you asked. Let's say whether we're going to do a live streaming of a data for model monitoring. I don't think so. The live streaming of a data would help you instantly to monitor your ML models. Let me tell you, let me just walk you through the reality here, how it works. Okay, let's say we have trained an ML models. Let's say now we have deployed your ML models to production. Perfect. The job is done. So now we need to monitor the models in the production. So what you're asking is, will whether we will be doing model monitoring on a live data? Yes, we do. We do monitor every data that we are, I mean, every invocation that is made by your customer. But does that helps you to monitor your ML model? Does that helps you to detect the data drift, for example? It's not going to help you, because the way it works, let's say you have deployed your ML model to production right now. Let's say only the few customers has invoked your ML model. That means you have very few amount of a data, right? So you cannot instantly decide if there is a data drift or not. There is some kind of a threshold that we set. So in case if the threshold has been crossed, then only we can say that, okay, there is a certain percentage of a data drift is appeared. So for that, it takes at least, let's say, a couple of weeks, maybe 6 weeks, maybe a couple of months, 1 or 2 months, for example, to decide there is a certain amount of drift, basically. So the way it works, so basically, first we need to harvest your customer data. Let's say we harvest our 6 weeks ka data. So then we schedule our model monitoring job in order to on the data that we collected for last 6 weeks, and then we do a data drift analysis on top of it. So based on the last 6 weeks data, we decide, okay, whether there is any drift appeared or not. So I'm telling an example of 6 weeks. Maybe you want to do a data drift every week. Maybe you want to do a data drift once in every 2 weeks. So that's how it's going to work. So we do have answers on top of it, definitely, yes. So especially in a model monitoring module, we do have a example where we're going to pick one of a cloud in order to do this data drift analysis. Yep.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
let me know if you
Actually,
folks have. Yeah,
I have
go
part
ahead.
two of this question as well. What you say, like if any data is live streaming, I don't know like how this thing works. For example, in the big data, we have a lot of data that is getting streamed, and then we are, building some model out of it. So, like, from the perspective of data scientist, like I haven't seen any data live streaming. I have mostly seen like a kind of like data is being taken out, and then we
Taken
just
out,
build some model
stored.
on the past data.
Okay.
But is there any possibility of like having a live data, and on the basis of that live data we need to build some model, and like and live
Okay.
streaming of
So
the data is going, yeah, yeah.
I got it. I got it. I got it. See, like, that's a good question. So can we build a model on a live streaming data? Let's say you're starting from a scratch. So that could be too much hectic, and you might not have enough data. So consider that you can talk about the use cases like let's say you have a live streaming data from IoT use cases, or maybe let's say you're streaming a live data from huge applications. Let's say we're live streaming a data from a Netflix, for example. Like billions of customers, they use Netflix. Let's say you want to train an ML model to check whether your platform is working perfectly, whether your application is available, is there any chances of crashing. Let's say there's a use case. You can definitely stream a lot of amount of a data, right, from Netflix. Consider that you have launched, let's say you're a CEO of Netflix, and let's say you're launched Netflix today, right? And you cannot just build an ML model based on a today's data that you are streamed. No, it won't work like that. So definitely you need to have some kind of a data that you harvested already, and then you need to have some version of an ML model. Definitely you can use the later streaming data that you have to retrain your ML models, definitely, yes. And another view of this, you can use this live streaming data to do live inferences. That's how it works. Yeah, perfect. So now let me just go ahead and start answering the questions that is asked in the chat window. Okay. Okay, so prerequisites of this particular program. So Kushal asked the questions. I mean, as I mentioned, any folks who going to lie in this particular radar, consider that you can be a data scientist, data engineer, ML engineer, DevOps person, solution architect. I mean, so when we talk about solution architect, DevOps people, they will be focusing on the roles related to ML engineering, MLOps engineering kind of a roles basically. So definitely they can able to get started with this particular program. Okay, so please let me know if anyone has a question. I'm going to spare a few more minutes. You can just unmute your mic. You can talk to me. So someone does ask a question, do I need any programming prerequisites, coding experience? I believe I answered this particular question already. So let's say if you're going to say that I'm an existing data scientist, data engineer, definitely need to have a programming expertise. But let's say if we're going to focus on MLOps engineering roles, ML engineering roles, or somewhere you're going to work on a lead positions, you need to have some good awareness, some basics, but not like an expertise like data scientist or data engineer. Emmanuel asked a question, can I have the same discounts if I want to start in April? So, I mean, so let's say we cannot guarantee like whether we're going to have the same discounts, but let's say the way it works, let's say if we're going to proceed for, let's say we're going to register for our advanced or maybe advanced plus plan, for example, right? Okay, let me just explain. Okay, let's say you go to register for our advanced plan or advanced plus plan. So you automatically get a bonus reattendance opportunity on both the plans. That means you register today, but you can also retake the both January batch and April batch completely for free. So you don't want to repay any amount in April. So April batch is completely for free. So when will I be receiving access to the recordings of today's session? I mean the demo session. So you'll be receiving an access to today's demo session by tomorrow. Perfect. I'm just checking out the few more questions in the chat window. If anyone else has a question, please make sure you just unmute your mic and talk to me. And as we have discussed, this offers us strictly till 26th of December only, because we're already running this campaign for almost 3 weeks. We are almost sold out all the seats. So we're looking for just 10 seats for this particular offers. Only 10 seats. I mean, we believe the 10 seats almost we've been sold out already. We might have very few more seats left. Okay.
So Sarthak, are we going to cover Databricks MLOps end to end?
So we will be covering Databricks, especially on a feature store. But when it comes to Databricks, we don't have any specific hands-on. So we'll be talking about an hands-on. When it comes to everything related to the cloud, we'll be covering, let's say, especially the core MLOps tools like SageMaker Studio, Azure AML Studio for end-to-end MLOps pipelines, or maybe when it comes to GCP Vertex CI basically. So we do have covered Databricks, especially very few things that is mostly used in the market, especially like feature stores on top of Databricks or something like that.
So you in Azure ML Studio, will you be covering the Azure ML SDK to deploy the pipelines and YML files?
Exactly.
Pipelines.
That's correct.
Yes.
Exactly. That's correct. 100%. So we'll be covering Azure AML Studio, and Azure AML Studio does uses ML flow on top of it. We'll be covering the complete Azure ML Studio SDK, especially we'll be covering Azure MLOps version 2 architecture, which is the latest architecture which is used by every organizations.
Okay, so in Azure, we do MLOps from Databricks also, and then register the models into Azure ML Studio.
Exactly.
Does that
Yes.
also that also is covered here?
Not part of. I mean, as because let's say we don't want to bias more into the data side of it, because anything related to the MLOps side will be covering. So that's how it works.
Okay, maybe I'll give you a call to have
Yeah,
discussion on that.
definitely. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
So because everything related to the core part of MLOps, let's say it can be Azure Databricks, or maybe we can also mention Azure Data Factory, ADF, somewhere where we can build data pipeline. So I mean, so we don't cover anything related to data engineering or data science as part of the basics of it. So anything related to MLOps part. So where we need to understand how to build ML pipelines, we will be covering. Okay, perfect. So let me just answer a few more questions. Please let me know if you have any other questions, folks. Okay, Shakti did mention, I tried to click on this link. So this site can't be reached, what it says. Okay, so let me just click the same link that I shared. You can see that I'm just clicking the same link that I shared. Okay, otherwise let me just share this direct link where you can also download a curriculum. So I'm going to share this direct link in the chat window. So you can just click on this link, which I shared right now. We can download the curriculum directly. Okay, so perfect. Okay, so Monica just answered question. I'm a computer vision engineer. Can I switch to MLOps engineer? It's a perfect. That's a perfect thing to do, Monica, because let's say you're already into a computer vision. So let's say something. Let's say you're doing some projects on computer vision. Let's say probably. I believe in case if you are into deep learning, especially when we're doing a deep learning on computer vision, so definitely you are the first person that you need to understand MLOps, because let's say you might be a data scientist today, but probably let's say once you started applying for a different job roles outside a different organization that you're looking for, it's definitely you'll came across the difficulties, because we do have data scientists before taking the particular program. Some of the folks who do call me and tell the first question that I have, so you're a data scientist, why you're looking for MLOps? That's the first question that I asked. So they mentioned, so this is what the problems that I faced. I'm really good at building ML models, working with mathematics, statistics, and probability, but so I really fail in an interview, especially I don't have a knowledge in deploying my models to production. They ask, okay, have you built any ML pipelines? Have you deployed a model to production? Do you have any idea of model monitoring, versioning of data, CI/CD pipelines? That's the biggest question mark. So that would be the problem today. So this program could able to fulfill that particular necessity for your side. Okay, so here we have Rahul ask a question. A project per cloud platform per technology are one cloud platform? No, Rahul, so we'll be building the hands-on on every cloud. So as I'm talking about the level 4 architecture project will be built on every cloud platform. Let's say if I go to this Cloud 101 module. So when I'm talking about SageMaker Studio, we are talking about. On top of Studio, we'll be integrating every tools probably that we have discussed previously, integrating all the DevOps tools and integrating all the ML tools like SageMaker, model training instances, and we'll be building this end-to-end pipelines, including the code repositories, right? So it's an integration of multiple tools. That's what we say, integration of DevOps tools, integration of machine learning tools, and infrastructure for deployment, model monitoring tools, data version control tools, integration of everything. Okay, so I'm going to spare a few. Please let me know if you folks have any questions.
Anything like SonarQube for code testing and all that?
I mean, so let's say we will be talking about testings in MLOps definitely, but we won't be biasing towards, let's say, the DevOps side of a testing. So let's say definitely we do some kind of a code testing, especially when it comes to our DevOps side itself. Let's say, let me just go to the curriculum once again. So when it comes to the code testing that you're talking about, we will be talking about not just a code testing. There's a lot of testings that we need to discuss when it comes to MLOps. It can be a code testing, which is part of a DevOps side. Yes, we will be talking about that. And there's a very small, as part of a hands-on and one of a cloud, we'll be also covering how this testings will be done. Let's say when it comes to our module number 4, CI/CD itself, here we'll be covering the different kind of testings, especially we do have an answer on top of it. But literally there are different kind of testings that we have to perform: data quality testing, model performance testing, right? There are different kind of testings that we need to that we will be discussing in this particular program.
Deployment side, A/B testing, maybe 2 different models deployed and then testing, defining which model will go in production.
Definitely, we'll be also talking about A/B testing, and again, especially when it comes to, let's say, Kubernetes. Let's say here we will be talking about deployment strategies. Like there are different kind of deployment strategies that we're going to discuss. What is this? A blue, green deployment strategy, right? So there are different kind of strategies also we'll be talking about here.
Yeah. Great. So it's a very comprehensive, exhaustive curriculum. Thanks.
Yeah, perfect. And yes, let me know, folks, if you have any more questions. In the meantime, I'm going to just play one of our testimonials from our participants. So Rahul does ask a question. So which platform will be using for live classes? Please don't use one. So much lagging. So Rahul, so probably you need to check your internet connectivity, because I don't see any other candidates just complained about the platform. So definitely, so you can check the connectivity. That is something that is manageable, right? Okay, perfect. So now let me just quickly play this testimonial.
So maybe you can just give some idea about what is that company that you applied for, so then we can talk about the ML engineering job role, what they're asked for you.
So I applied for the AIML role for artificial / machine learning engineer.
Okay.
So there also cloud part also there. So they require cloud part and Docker. So they asked me question related to Docker.
Okay.
To Kubernetes. And on basis of AWS, they asked me the full CI/CD pipeline, how it works, and how one question is how we stop CI/CD pipeline. What is the procedure for stopping? It is possible manually or not? So that type of, or they said me how you deploy. From dev to production, how can you deploy? Such type of question they asked me that interview. So I give all the questions with the help of your teaching on this, sir.
Perfect. I'm really happy for that. Okay. So I'm really happy for that. That's good. So what's the company name that you mentioned?
So SA Technology.
SA Technology. So based out of?
In Mumbai.
Mumbai, perfect. So you're also from Mumbai, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. So now you're asking questions. So now you have a 20 days of time.
Yes.
So the joining date. So you're asking, okay, can I able to apply for other job roles like MLOps engineer or something?
Yes.
Definitely. Please do apply. So even if you get a better package, yes, why not, right? So you can also.
Okay, so basically, is one of our previous batch participants
For the better opportunity.
Yeah.
So please go ahead, as you usually do, apply for these jobs and share us a job description if you need any insights on that. I'm very much happy to provide that. Okay. Yeah, so that's really awesome. And is there any other questions that you need to ask?
Okay, sir.
So purely now, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So you can listen to these testimonials. We do have these testimonial videos that we have published. We do have peoples in various different countries they're joining from, data scientists from UK. We do have previous ISRO engineers who have taken a program. Just listen to what they are talking about. And so you have listened to the Rahul testimonial. So he got after completing the program, he could able to crack the job. And he is asking a question. He has some waiting time, obviously, the joining dates. He's just asking, okay, can I apply for other jobs, even different companies, so looking for even more better opportunities. So why not, obviously, right? So there are different testimonials like this. You can able to listen and you can able to take a look, which definitely help you. Yep. Okay, here we have Ishwar says we can be a recruiter. I'm really happy. So we do have a lot of, and this is the 7th batch that we are doing for this year. We do have participants ranging from 1 year to 18 to 20 years of experience peoples coming from different backgrounds. So definitely. Perfect. So let me know, folks, if you have any other questions. I have shared the link once again in a chat window. And again, this offers that we are talking about, let me just quickly review the offer that we have. So the first offer is a free upgradation offer. I mean, are you looking for advanced plan? Just go ahead and register for basic plan. You get advanced plan upgradation for free. So same thing applies. Let's say you're looking for advanced plus plan, the topmost plan, just go ahead and register for advanced plan. You get advanced plus. So this offers us strictly till 26th of January, sorry, 26th of December. I'm really sorry for that. Okay. So then comes the option number 2, the discounted offer. You can able to get a maximum of 5% price cut on a basic and advanced plan, and you can get a maximum of 10% price cut on advanced plus plan. But you cannot climb both the offers together, right? You can either take discounted offers, either you can take EMI offers, or the free upgradation offer. So otherwise, let's say you're looking for an installments can be a best option. Let's say you're looking for not to pay in one single shot, you need some breathing space here. You can get on a basic plan, you can get maximum of 3 months EMI tenure. You don't pay any additional interest rates, so you'll be paying the same course fee for the next 3 months. When advanced or advanced plus, you get maximum of 6 months. Let's say if you're looking for the price cut or EMI offer, I would suggest you folks to DM me, so you can able to get the customized registration links for the particular cards that you have, so we can able to customize the offer for you folks. Okay, so thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us. I hope you enjoyed our program. If you feel why Cyclone Technology is the best persons to teach this particular program, so you can just go ahead and check more about us in our website. So being part of supported by Department of Science and Technology, incubated in PhD STEP, and we've been represent ourselves into various different stages. You can listen to our testimonials and other testimonials that we have mentioned from our groups. You'll get some better clarity and confidence, so before you taking this particular program. Okay, so thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this particular program. Please do call me if you need some consulting, so before you proceeding this particular program. And so we are almost honestly closing our registrations, because we are starting this campaign from last 3 weeks. So let me know if you folks have any questions. You can just feel free to reach out to me in the numbers that I've shared. Let me just share the links once again in the chat window. The first link is for registration. The second link is for downloading the curriculum. The third link where you can able to download a free ebooks, and below is my contact informations. Please do call me if you have any questions. And the offers are strictly till 26th of December. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day, enjoy your weekend.